Good morning, Mayor. Thank you for bearing with us.
No worries. I'm just impressed Mr. Sawyer's been able to figure it out too.
We are just waiting for Victoria Fleming, and we'll get started shortly.
Okay.
Could the mayor please repeat his last comment? I think I only got a part of it. Something about my technical reality.
No. It's my only comment was it's wonderful seeing you on this early Monday morning.
I'm sure that's what you said. I just totally misconstrued it. Still haven't figured out how to get that nice background, but you gave me the instructions. I'm just afraid to use them.
And I've upgraded those my backgrounds, but I'm staying with city stuff here.
Yeah, there you go.
Callie, did everyone RSVP? Did the vice mayor say she would be able to attend?
I believe Liz and Stephanie were in the process of trying to get a hold of her. So I will double check with them real quick.
Thank you.
Mornings are a challenge for her.
Sure. Do you want to try to call? Good morning.
No, he's asking if Fleming.
Oh, we're still waiting for Victoria Fleming.
And did you hear if she's going to attend or not?
She said she was going to attend. Do you want to try calling her? Oh, here.
And you're so just remind them that they're live.
Okay. And remember, you're live in the meeting?
Yep.
Oh, I don't have Fleming.
I do.
And you guys are not on mute, just FYI.
Yeah. Oh. We're gonna try to call Victoria right now.
Good morning, Mayor. We just spoke with Victoria. She will be logging on shortly.
Great. As soon as she gets on, we'll do a roll call and get the meeting underway.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mayor. No, it's okay.
Ms. LaCursi, Tony Gosner here. If you could promote Scott Westrop and Scott Moon as well, they'll be speaking too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Gosner. I have promoted Scott Westrop, and I will promote Scott Moon right now.
And I believe the vice mayor is waiting to be promoted to a panelist also.
I am looking. I don't see her yet.
I believe it's the call-in number.
Okay.
We can give the Vice Mayor speaking permissions,
But we can't promote
but we can't promote her to a panelist
because she called in.
because she called in on a telephone line.
Okay. All right, good morning all. We'll call this November 23rd meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please do a roll call?
Good morning, Councilmember Sawyer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Fleming,
Here.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Here.
All council members are present.
Okay, I have some information to share with everyone. Interpreter services are being provided in Spanish for today's meeting. Can our Zoom host explain how that will work?
Of course. One moment. Interpreter Charles, can you please interpret what the mayor just stated?
Buenos días. Servicios de intérprete están disponibles. Ahorita vamos a explicar cómo se pueden acceder.
Thank you. Live interpretation can be heard on the Spanish channel. You can join the Spanish channel by clicking on the interpretation icon in Zoom toolbar. It looks like a globe. Charles.
Interpretación en vivo estará disponible en el canal del español. Pueden hacer clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo.
Live interpretation will be heard on the Spanish channel. At agenda item 3, public comment, the interpreter on the panel will be prepared to assist anyone needing interpretation. Additional instruction will be given at agenda item 3, public comment. Interpreter Charles, I will go ahead and I will assign you first.
Puede oír la interpretación en español en el canal del español durante la agenda número 3, comentarios públicos van a poder estar disponibles, van a tener ayuda de un intérprete en el canal de español y vamos a instruirlos más en ese momento.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, some housekeeping just to remind my two colleagues to keep your audio on mute unless you're speaking. Staff will remain muted until needing to speak. As members of the public join the meeting, you'll be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. If you're calling in from a telephone and choose to speak during the public comments portion of today's agenda, for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone number to resident in the last 4 digits of your phone number. Madam City Clerk, could you explain how public comments will be heard during today's meeting?
Yes, thank you. At each agenda item, the item is presented, the mayor will ask for council comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the mayor has called for public comment, the mayor will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on a specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and a timer will appear on the screen for the council and public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will play voicemail public comments. If you provide a live public comment or an agenda item, on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, e-comment, or recorded voice message for public comment, your email, e-comment, or voice message public comment will not be duplicated, read, or played during the meeting. Additionally, there is one public comment period today on today's agenda to speak on non-agenda matters, item 3. This is the time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Mayor?
Great, thank you. And could you also explain how the Spanish translation feature will work?
There is a Spanish channel icon on the Zoom meeting, and the public may participate on that channel. Interpreters are participating in Zoom and will be translating the meeting on the Spanish channel. During the public comment period, we'll step in to assist translation of public comment. Per the Brown Act, an additional 3 minutes will be added to the timer to accommodate the translation. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Mayor?
Thank you. And I will also remind everyone we'll probably be taking a break for the translation services after about an hour, hour and a half or so. So we are now taking public comment on item 3, non-agenda matters. This is the time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of this subcommittee. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam Host, would you please facilitate public comment, item 3?
Of course. One moment, please. Sorry about the delay. I am seeing no hands raised. No hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, so we have no public comment on item 3. Then moving on to item 4, approval of minutes. Both 4.1 and 4.2 were draft minutes from our July 1st meeting and from our September 25th meeting. Mr. Sawyer, Ms. Fleming, did either of you find any corrections or additions or adjustments to the minutes?
Neither.
Nope.
Okay, we'll accept those as submitted. On to item 5.1, Fire Chief Gosner or Deputy Chief Westrup, will one of you be introducing this item?
Yes, thank you. I'll be introducing it. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Mr. Sawyer. We're very pleased to bring this item to this group. I'll remind you that in December 15th, you'll see this as well as others at a study session, but this is our initial plan to increase our wildfire resiliency and response. This is something that's been being developed over the last few years. And this is one of those items that a lot of work has gone into it. This is going to be very high level, but I'll tell you, Deputy Chief Scott Westrop, he's the one to develop this plan through discussions with our department. Done a great job. So when the presentation is over, myself, Deputy Chief Scott Westrop, and our Fire Marshal, Scott Moon, will be available for any questions. With that, I'll turn it over to Scott Westrop. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Good morning, Mayor Schwedhelm, Vice Mayor Fleming, and Councilmember Sawyer. Scott Westrop, Deputy Fire Chief for the City of Santa Rosa. Today, we're going to present to you the Santa Rosa Fire Department Wildland Resiliency and Response Strategic Plan. Next slide, please. So when we get into the purpose of this plan, need to move you all. First of all, the name's it's quite a mouthful. So if you hear me refer to it or you hear it around the city referred to as WUI 2.0, it's our sort of internal mnemonic for what we're talking about. So the Wildland Resiliency and Response Strategic Plan looks at the risk and threat potential of wildland fires, and it'll adjust the prevention, mitigation, and operational response components of the organization. This plan is a holistic assessment and adjustment of the organization to better prepare and respond to the increased threat of wildfires within or entering the city limits. This plan, and the way I've explained it to people, is that we are looking at anywhere from the boots that we wear to the state and federal legislation that we'll be supporting, and anything in between. Nothing's off the table, and it's a very raw look at all of our programs moving forward. This plan's a 5-year living document, and over the course of the 5 years, we'll continue to make progress in all these strategies that we're going to present to you today. After those 5 years, we'll take a look at the plan and the enhancements that we've made, the improvements that we've made, see where we're at with the threat matrix at that point. And then a new plan will be created through a SWOT analysis, or a strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. And of course, this plan aligns with the City Council goals, crisis response through early 2021, public safety reform, and priorities. Next slide, please. So it was sort of interesting developing this plan in relation to the recruitment and diversity strategic plan, because it kind of feels like everybody understands the background of this and understands the purpose of this plan. There's really nothing shocking in here, I don't think, for everybody who's lived here for the past 3 or 4 years. So, but to give some more background, prior to 2017, the threat of a wildland fire within the city limits was very high. It's been called out in our local hazard mitigation plan for years. It's part of the general plan, but the realization of a large-scale event was kept relatively minimal since 1964. And one thing I really want to emphasize is the Santa Rosa Fire Department and the city has remained an industry leader in wildland fire prevention and response throughout the course of its history. But as we all know, since 2017, Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa, we face this continual onslaught of large-scale wildland fires. We'll get into more details on those later. We've all lived through them. And really what we've seen is a major shift in the weather patterns to a much longer, hotter, drier, and windier fire season, which we've all seen as well. So after 2017, the department looked at itself and really we couldn't build our entire department based off of a single event. And I think we all can agree at this point, 2017 can no longer be looked at as an anomaly or a 50-year event, because year after year, it seems like we're facing a new wildland threat. So the wildland fire threat, or the realization of the wildland fire threat, is unfortunately the new normal that the community faces. And we as an organization need to adjust our modeling in order to protect our citizens, carry out the mission of the department, and adhere to the goals of the City Council. Next slide, please. So I want to sort of talk about where we were pre-2017, so before 2017, and the implementation of the best practices that we employed prior to the Tubbs fire. Our Fire Prevention Bureau has the best building codes and standards that meet or exceed state or federal guidance. We have the obviously defined WUI or Wildland Urban Interface standards for prevention, mitigation, and response. We have very strong mutual aid and automatic aid agreements, and we're part of the California Master Mutual Aid System, which basically, I think everybody knows, but just to make sure, is that's where we can send resources out to help our neighbors, and then neighbors come in to help us, and we've all seen that work very well, and it's a very strong system throughout the state of California. We've always been very aggressive in our firefighting strategies and tactics, and we fall in line with CAL FIRE procedures. We have industry leading, particularly in the region, for Wildland Fire Command, fire response, and mitigation practices. And we always have the top-of-the-line CAL FIRE spec wildland firefighting personal protective equipment. That changes over the course of time based on their science and technology, but we always have that, and we always protect our personnel very well. And we deploy one Type 3 fire engine, one Type 6 fire engine, and a water tender. So the Type 3 fire engine is the one you see on the top left of your screen. Very short wheelbase, can handle pump and roll capabilities. It's lighter, it carries a little bit less water, different tools than you see on the fire engine you see on the street every day. And the Type 6 fire engine, which is even smaller, four-wheel drive, pump and roll capabilities, very agile piece of equipment, but that's what you see on the bottom left of your screen there. And water tender is essentially, it looks like a regular fire engine you see driving down the street, but it carries 1,500 to 2,000 gallons of water. So in areas where there's no hydrants, we can use the water tender or multiple water tenders to supply our fire engines with water. Next slide, please. So post 2017, after the Tubbs fire, we have made a lot of catalyst improvements to the both to the city system and the entire fire system throughout the region. The fire departments developed and implemented a community wildfire protection plan through the Fire Prevention Bureau. The Fire Prevention Bureau has developed a vegetation management inspector position. It's still pending being hired through authorization, but this is a limited term position, and this was created through an internal reorganization and funded internally. So it's just the Bureau has really tried to get grants and tried to move the vegetation management program forward. And so they had to find a way to get something in place. And so through this internal reorganization funding mechanism, they're able to get a vegetation management inspector in place. That is not an entire program. That's just the inspector. And again, it's a limited term position. One major improvement is the city now has the ability to send IPAWS emergency alert messaging. So that's the emergency alert system, wireless emergency alert system. So now we have the ability to send those out, which we exercised in the glass fire. We have access to an advanced wildfire camera system and weather station systems. We use these on a daily basis to monitor what's going on. It was a huge component of our response to the glass fire or the shady fire at the time. And the picture on the top left of your screen was a picture I took of the computer screen in the Emergency Operations Center. And that is the minute that the Kincaid fire was reported and started in the geysers. So that was within a minute of dispatch. And I was able to send that picture to all of our crews that were pre-staged for that for the weather event, and they responded and did what they could. We've developed and implemented the pre-planned evacuation zones, which were exercised in the glass and shady fire. The picture on the bottom left is the evacuation zones. And we've really enhanced our communication and cooperation with federal, state, regional, and city partners. We've enhanced and changed some of our firefighting strategies and tactics based off the lessons we learned out of the fires that we've faced in the last 4 fire seasons. And really, one of the big catalyst changes for us internally is the aggressive upstaffing programs due to critical weather conditions within the city and the region. So as you all know, when we face a red flag or a severe weather warning, we'll put additional fire engines and additional overhead on the street to make sure that we're better protected. One thing I want to bring up that it actually came about after these slides were created was we were just informed last week by Cal OES that we now have the access to a all hazard incident awareness and assessment fixed wing aircraft. Essentially, it's a King Air that has a high-level FLIR system, the ability to send real-time situational awareness and data to the field. It comes at no cost to the city or to anybody. They're available 7 days a week, 12 hours a day out of the Sacramento International Airport. So there was an incident on the glass fire where, because the glass fire was already burning and when the shady fire started that eventually became part of the glass fire, we actually had a night air attack, and that gave us the situational awareness and the intelligence we needed to plan our firefighting strategies and tactics and evacuations. That's not available to us all the time, but now we have a new tool through the state where we could actually request that aircraft, if it's available and not being used elsewhere, to come and give us that real-time information that we need. So that's really a huge win for us in regard to situational awareness. Next slide, please. So when we get into the actual risk assessment and looking at what our risk was pre-Tubbs and post-Tubbs, this is really a telling slide for us. In fact, every time I show this to any of the managers or any of our personnel, they're like, "Wow, really?" And it's really telling what we're looking at here. So it's sort of a weird time frame from 2003 to pre-Tubbs 2017, and the reason is we changed reporting formats in 2004. So extracting data pre-2004 is extremely difficult. So that's why it's kind of an odd year. And something to keep in mind as we look at these numbers is this is just fires that started and remained within the city limits. This does not account for fires that we go to in our immediately adjoining jurisdictions or within the state responsibility area. So in looking at the top fires that we had by acreage in the top box, 2003, we had the Lofty Perch Fire, which obviously led to the fireworks ban in Santa Rosa. It was 42 acres. It burned essentially in the same area that was just burned in the glass fire. San Miguel was 14 acres in 2004, and we had Dutton Avenue in 2017, August of 2017, that was 6.5 acres. Pythian and Elizabeth, 5 acres, and Kelsey and Knowles at 4 acres. So what that shows is by acreage, we've kept fires very small, so our prevention, mitigation, and operational tactics were working. It's just the climate change and the conditions that we face have obviously brought bigger fires into the city. We don't really start them here. They just come to us, and we end up absorbing a lot of the energy and damage from them. Looking at fires from a dollar loss perspective, again, Lofty Perch was the highest dollar loss. In 2003, there was 3 structures lost, and keep in mind when we tabulate structures within our reporting system, that can be any sort of building. So for instance, in Lofty Perch, it was 1 home that was lost, and the others were outbuildings and sheds for a total of $750,000. San Miguel was 6 structures lost. I can tell you firsthand that there was no homes lost in that fire. Those were chicken coops and storage buildings and sheds. 7th Street, 1 structure lost, obviously wasn't a home at $26,000. And then Parker Hill Court and Lana Road were other smaller losses that we've had. So looking at those numbers compared to what we're going to look at the next slide, obviously we've managed to keep things relatively in check based on our prevention and operational standards. But these things just keep coming into our community and creating more damage. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, these are statistics that all of us within the city or within the community know all too well. I'm just going to look at the top 4 up here, which is the Tubbs and Nuns, which was part of the Central LNU complex in 2017, the Kincaid Fire in 2019, Walbridge Myers in 2020, and of course the Glass and Shady, which was September of this year. So with the Nuns and Tubbs fire, there was 24 fatalities within that incident, 36,000 acres, over 5,600 structures destroyed and 300 damaged. Within the city, we had 9 fatalities and over 3,000 structures destroyed. As we move along through the progression of these fires, one thing I'm not going to go through and read all of the statistics, but one thing I'd like to highlight is the fatalities. While the fires are getting bigger in acreage, the fatalities are going down and the number of structures destroyed is going down. Quite frankly, that's not good enough for us. We want this to be a net zero across the board. But we are making progress in how we're doing things and how we're addressing these large-scale fires that come into the city of Santa Rosa. A couple other fires to note is really we started to see a major catalyst change in large wetland fires around 2014 in Lake and Mendocino County. You recall the fires that burned through Middletown and Lower Lake. And then obviously the Mendocino complex was right on our borders at the time. Prior to this year, that was the largest fire by acreage in California state history. That's been surpassed by the August complex, and then the Camp Fire, of course, in 2018 as well, which was the fire in Paradise. Next slide, please. So this didn't take a whole lot of analysis. I didn't have a calculator out or anything, but the wildland fire threat, and when I say threat, I really mean the realization of a large-scale event to the city of Santa Rosa suddenly and seriously increased starting in 2017 has continued throughout the course of the last several years. We've really worked on a lot of enhancements throughout the last 3 or 4 years. While in the midst of continual fire recovery, continual crisis management, and the pandemic, we have made progress. We haven't just been sitting around resting on our laurels. We've really been trying to make catalyst changes to the entire system. But it's become essential that the preparedness of the city, the community, and the fire department, we're at a point where we can proactively improve to enhance factors of prevention, mitigation, and response. So we're approaching this to take on these challenges by sort of looking at it from a zero-based budgeting approach, where we're starting from ground zero and building our way back up, looking at everything that we possibly can. So we're going to adjust all factors across all bureaus of the fire department, all of our programs. So the Wildland and Resiliency Response Strategic Plan is going to assess 6 major strategies that would comprise our programs and make adjustments to each one of those strategies. And the enhancement of these strategies will holistically improve not only the fire department, but ultimately the city and the community, so we can collectively face this new normal that we're engaged with. Next slide, please. So as we get into the strategies here, there's 6 strategies, and we'll get into them more in detail, but it's legislation, capital enhancements, non-capital enhancements, operations, staffing, and community engagement. One thing you'll see as we go through these slides is that there's 2 major things that are not covered. Number one is the fire department infrastructure needs. It would have been sort of redundant to bring those up again. They're outlined in our strategic plan and they're outlined on our deployment analysis. And then the other part of that is you won't see any requests for personnel in here. That's all outlined in our staffing needs assessment. And again, as the chief referenced, you'll be seeing this as more of a global picture in the December 15th study session, where we're going to bring you a very global look at what the entire fix looks like. Next slide, please. So the first strategy we're going to look at is legislation, and it's just sort of an overarching term that captures everything that's going to have to do with really revolves around prevention, alerting, some aspects of response, our utility partners, things like that. And we've really made a lot of advancement in this area. We made a lot of significant progress on local prevention and mitigation factors, including the Community Wildfire Protection Program. At the state level, we've increased our ability for alerting, and we continue to work with the state on alerting and response capabilities. And obviously at the federal level, the mayor's been involved with this, the vice mayor's been involved with this, but working on FEMA policy change, working with the FCC on cell tower resiliency, cell phone reciprocity, and obviously improvements to the iPod systems. Sorry, it's early for me too. So some of the things that we're going to focus on and continue to focus on as we move forward here is local fire prevention statutes and ordinances to improve those, local, state, and fire code changes. We're going to continue progression on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, development of a vegetation management program, and I'll call this out a couple times, but I want to make it clear that this was presented to you on the September 25th Public Safety Subcommittee meeting by Fire Marshal Moon. It's a standalone request because it's such a big topic and a big item, but it is part of the entire global picture, but it won't be called out necessarily in this plan as a request for funding. That was done as a standalone item on the 9/25 meeting. We're going to continue to work on state policy and standards related to prevention, alerting, response, and recovery. federal policy related to alerting, communications, response, and recovery. We're going to continue to work with our utility partners on their safety and the safety of the community, commodity distribution methods, and resiliency. And then we're going to need to figure out and work with the city on what we're going to do as far as utilization of funds from statewide propositions, for instance, Prop 19, regional measures, which is the fire service public sales tax, which would be a countywide sales tax that we may be looking at next year, Measure G, which we may be looking at next year, and then how we're going to use local tax revenue. Next slide, please. So capital enhancements, and really what this strategy is, it's putting the right tools in the hands of those who need it when it's necessary, and it's a crucial element to our success. Since 2017, the fire department has not added or replaced any capital items, particularly regarding apparatus dedicated directly to wildland fire prevention or suppression. So when we become drawn down on equipment, if we send out strike teams to other areas, if we're upstaffing, if we do a department recall, whatever the reason may be throughout the fire season, we don't have the proper amount of fire engines to put in service or the proper type of fire engine to put in service. So again, the fire engines that you see on the streets on a day-to-day basis are type 1s. They're very long, they're very low, they're set up for structure firefighting and rescue. So it's better to have the right tools out there at the right time, and we're not having to make do with what we have. So you'll hear me say this again, this is a snapshot in time, and really looking at bolstering our current situation to where it's going to be much better moving into the future, but it's going to be part of an ongoing process of involvement, improvement, and enhancement. So we're going to be focused on purchase of Type 3 wildland fire engines, which you saw on the first couple slides there. They're the bigger of the two fire engines that are dedicated to wildland firefighting. Type 6 wildland engines, which are the smaller, very agile firefighting equipment. Tactical water tender, which is a shorter wheelbase, 4-wheel drive type water tender, so it can get out into the wilderness where it needs to be. Pickup trucks with skid mounted pumps. So one of the realities that we face is that when we upstaff or when we do a department recall, we literally have people out fighting fire in our community education minivan and pickup trucks with shovels and no way to actually fight fire, put water on the ground. So there's an ability to put a skid-mounted pump in the back of a pickup truck, and that becomes a 2-person firefighting tool. So in the future, any pickup truck that we buy will have the ability to have a skid-mounted pump inserted to it. You slide the pump in, and you can go to work, and that's a 2 to 3-person firefighting tool right there. So, and the need for support vehicles. This is like stake size to deliver equipment. It could be a passenger van to deliver personnel and move personnel around. So. Just generally support vehicles, and we have some different ideas on what that looks like. So one thing I want to draw out is these items can be considered one-time expenditures due to the fact that they have a replacement time of anywhere between 12 to 15 years based on usage, and they will be part of the fleet replacement system. Next slide, please. So for non-capital enhancements, really the strategy doesn't change. It's just putting the right tools in the hands of those who need them when they need it. And again, our ability to upstaff and perform department recalls is very important to us because we really only have 39 people on the street on a day-to-day basis. When we upstaff during red flag events, that goes up to 48. We put 2 additional engines and a battalion chief on the road. And then again, when we do a department recall, which really never happened pre-2017, and now it's happening at least twice a year, we run out of resources and supplies very quickly. So the idea behind this is we're going to build supply caches, and with the additional apparatus, we'll have the ability to put a lot more effective firefighting forces onto the streets when we need to. So efforts are going to be focused on looking at our personal protective equipment. We need to upgrade to the current CAL FIRE spec and build some variability into our wildland PP based on what the threat or the task is. Wildland firefighting tools and equipment, I won't go into the details because I don't want to bore you too much more than I already probably have, but this is going to be a cache of hand tools, hose modules, firing equipment, things like that. So we can send those additional apparatus to get more stuff and go out and actually be more of an effective firefighting force. And then mobile and portable radios. We need the ability to dual band our radios, which is a pretty expensive venture. So we can talk on different networks across different frequency bands. And then we need to meet new CAL FIRE and OES radio specs, which we're really sort of just muddling our way through right now, trying to piecemeal it together. So this would be a holistic replacement of our mobile and portable radios to make sure that everybody on the street has the ability to be in communication so we don't have a failure there. Next slide, please. So operations in general, we've always prided ourselves on really being on the cutting edge of operations and response. And we're really proactively engaged across all threats into advancing command strategies and tactics in every threat that we face. But we can't go into this assessment and not look at ourselves internally and say, are we doing the best job that we can fighting these fires when they come into our community? So we're going to use lessons learned. We have a lot of internal subject matter expertise. We'll look at best practices used throughout the state of California and enhance our operational aspects of our wildland program. So we'll look at our response matrix, which kind of broken down as our daily response is what you would get on a 1-alarm vegetation fire. Reinforced response would be a multiple alarm vegetation fire, and extended response would be a conflagration or a campaign fire like you see with the shady glass tubs, all those types of fires and how we're going to respond to that. We'll look at our wildland training and our company standards, which are integrated together, and see if we're utilizing the best strategies and tactics out in the world right now. And then we'll look at our strategies and tactics holistically as far as are we deploying the right equipment at the right time to the right place? Are we doing things that are the most expedient and proficient and putting fires out as quickly as we can? And we'll look at command and control and make sure that we're commanding and controlling these incidents appropriately. The picture on the screen right now is the fire that we had earlier this year, directly above Cardinal Newman. While it occurred in the Larkfield area, so within the Sonoma County Fire District response area, the ridge line that you see and the power poles and power lines that you see on the ridge line above it is actually city limits. That's Flint Ridge. And so one thing that we did, even though this fire wasn't in the city limits, we were in unified command. We had our fire engines engaged on actually putting the fire out and fighting the fire. But then proactively, we took fire engines and lined Flint Ridge with fire engines to keep it out of the city limits. So our command staff and our personnel are so dedicated to the city and so dedicated to protecting it that we're taking those proactive stances like that. It's like it's not coming back into our town if we can prevent it. So just a quick story about that picture. Next slide, please. So as in everything, people are the most important asset to an organization across the board. And this part of the plan looks at enhancements and improvements that we can make with our staff at our current staffing levels. I don't want to take away from the fact that we need additional personnel, but that's called out in our Santa Rosa Fire Department staffing needs assessment. So again, this is just a snapshot in time looking at how we can make improvements with the current staff that we have. So we're going to use lessons learned, industry best practices, internal subject matter expertise to build staffing models and policy that provides additional staffing when necessary. And really the biggest thing that we have to, for us internally, that we have to build in is consistency and safe work hours. There's so many variables when we upstaff or when we get into a staffing model or when we do an all call. There's so many variables on the who, what, when, where, and why that we're doing things. We need to build some consistency in there, and then we end up with people that are on duty for far too long. So that's one of the focuses on this, is making sure that we're giving people breaks where they need breaks, and that we're still protecting the city and engaged where we need to be engaged. So this is a bit of an uphill struggle for us, but we have all these policies in place. It's just going to be building something that's modular enough that we can adjust it to every need that we have based on the varieties of situations that we face. Next slide, please. So community engagement and education is really the key to success here. And it's arguably where we've already made the most improvement throughout the course of the last 3 or 4 years. But to me, this is sort of the bedrock for success. It's developing and improving the two-way relationship between public safety providers in the city and the community that we protect. The better that we can prepare the community to protect themselves, the better off we're going to be because we can get into our job. And we really saw that during the glass fire. When we did those large scale evacuations early on, the community was prepared, they were ready, they were engaged, they were out of the way before that fire impacted the city, and we were able to fight fire where we needed to fight fire. So this is really going to look at the relationship and the communication features of both the organization and the community. And really what I've told the manager and the labor rep that are in charge of this strategy is, I want to look at how we listen and speak to the broad and diverse community that we serve. And regardless of demographic, socioeconomic status, access, or functional need, we need to be able to talk to everybody and listen to everybody. So that's really what this is focused on. So we get into sort of the nuts and bolts of the strategy. We're going to look at evacuation planning. Again, we have the evacuation plans in place, but we need to do better education. We need to exercise those plans better. Alert and warning capabilities. Again, this is where we need to make improvements on language and access and functional need barriers. Recently, our emergency management team received a grant for NOAA weather radios, which can be tied into the iPod system. So if you don't have a cell phone or if you don't have a landline or whatever the case may be, this NOAA weather radio will go off and it will alert you the same way that the iPod system would if you had a cell phone or had the ability. The nice thing with the NOAA radios is they can be tied into bed shakers or light systems, so those with vision impairment or hearing impairment now have a better way of being alerted as well. So that's a big win for us moving forward. Community outreach, we're looking at more listening sessions, more community meetings, more preparation tools. We're looking at low tech and we're looking at high tech. So low tech, for instance, right now we're looking at the old Smokey the Bear signs with the swinging arm. So when we're engaged with the community during a red flag event, we put it out on social media, we put it out through the city website, we use all these high tech tools, and that doesn't hit everybody in the population. So we need to make sure that everybody who's driving around especially in the wildland urban interface areas, has a visual cue that there's something different about the weather. And so we're even looking at low tech ways of doing that. And then obviously engage the community with high tech versions of community meetings, listening sessions. And so we're trying to bridge the gap and make sure that everybody's approached the same way. Community preparedness, that would be education on all of the programs, tools, their own preparation. We can hold seminars, classes, we can provide materials. So there's a lot of better ways that we can approach community preparedness. One thing I wanted to call out is that we just received a grant for 7 remote automated weather stations that will be strategically located throughout the city. They will be public facing. And so the community can watch the weather within their own community and see, hey, we're really getting to a critical stage. Maybe we should prepare differently. Maybe we shouldn't go out and do that mowing or do that weed eating, whatever the case may be. And then, excuse me, COPE or CERT program feasibility. We have a COPE program. And what this is, it's looking at the feasibility and what type, breadth, and depth of program that we need. And what I've told the manager and the labor representative that are in charge of this strategy is, this may be a feasibility study that needs to be done by an outside company to look at those things. But just to be clear with you all, this is the feasibility of what it looks like to build this program out. And that would turn into a standalone study session and request for ongoing funding. We don't have the current capacity within the organization to build out a really strong, solid CERT or COPE program. So that would be a separate ask at a later date once we get the feasibility done on what type of COPE or CERT program that we're looking at. Next slide, please. So looking at this plan's costs, again, I want to call out that this does not include infrastructure and does not include personnel. There's no timeline correlated with this, like you saw in the research or the recruitment and diversity strategic plan, because it's directly correlated to funding, number one, and a lot of it's already in progress. So the no cost or low cost items are already in progress. We're already making good headway there, but that's why there's no timeline here. So looking at the 6 strategies under one-time funding and then under ongoing funding, we'll just go down the list here. So for legislation, under one-time funding, the vegetation management program, you already were presented that again on 9/25. It's a standalone ask for $5.25 million. That's a 5-year vegetation management program that Fire Marshal Moon presented to you on September 25th. Under capital enhancements, the request would be for one-time funding of $2 million. That will get us 2 Type 3 fire engines, 2 Type 6 fire engines, a tactical water tender, 2 pickup trucks with skids, and the support vehicles we need at this time. Non-capital enhancements, $750,000. That will cover the radio upgrades, additional radios, the new personal protective equipment, and the wildland tool cache. In operations, staffing, and community engagement, there's no one-time asking. Those would all be handled separately under additional ongoing funding. So the total for one-time funding ask is $2.75 million in addition to the $5.25 million for the standalone vegetation management program. Under ongoing funding, which would be something that we would input into our budget during the budget cycle, a request for increase to our budget in certain areas. Under legislation, we're looking at an increase of $50,000 per year, and that would be dedicated to time and personnel that are spent on legislative improvements to the organization. Under capital enhancements, it's $50,000 per year to the ENR and replacement fund, essentially to balance the cost of the additional apparatus. Under non-capital enhancements, it would be an additional $20,000 per year to balance the increased list of equipment that we would have on the streets. Under operations, it'd be staff time materials, and then $5,000 per year that could be used for additional training materials, operational materials, outside training. The staffing is really an internal look at how we do things again with what we have right now. And so there's really just staff time dedicated to that as an ongoing cost. And then under community engagement, it would be the staff time with the staff that we have now, which we have 1 community outreach specialist. And then an additional $100,000 per year, and that would be dedicated to increasing access to all community members through community meetings, educational materials, preparation supplies, but really it would be focused on the ability to increase our translation and access materials so that we are hitting everybody throughout our diverse community. So the total ask on ongoing funding, and again, this will be in our budget request, would be $225,000 per year. Next slide, please. So just in summary, this is a small part of what will be a systematic improvement to the city and region. You'll see what that's going to look like more holistically on the December 15th study session. And again, this is just a snapshot in time, but this one-time funding would make significant strides and significant advancements on where we're at as an organization to be better prepared and better protect the community. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I would turn it over to you for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And for a Monday morning, it was actually, I really appreciate this information. It's very comprehensive and thorough. And some of those slides, they were eye-opening pre-2017 and post-2017. So thank you for that important information. Before I check with my colleagues for any questions they might have, what federal funding assistance might be available for wildfire mitigation? Because that, to me, that seems like it's ultimately going to be a dollar amount. And I don't know if that'd be Chief Gosner. Are there any options that might be in the works?
You know, we're always looking at granting opportunities for this type of funding. I know the Congressman Thompson is looking at some additional funding opportunities to help us. And we are currently engaged with setting up a meeting with him so we can discuss what that looks like moving forward for the city. And quite frankly, it's got to be a regional approach. We're dealing with the city here, but a lot of these fires are coming to the city. So I keep harping on the regional aspect of it, but we are doing everything we can at the federal level with Thompson's office to get what we need as a city to help us through this time as well. Great.
Thank you for those efforts, because I know when Fire Marshal Moon made his presentation, you see this, here's our jurisdictional limits, and like what Deputy Chief Westrup said about the Newman fire, I'm not sure if that's the correct name, but it's these things are happening outside our jurisdiction. So we have to take that regional approach. So I really appreciate all those efforts. And I agree. I know Congressman Thompson actually totally gets that. Now we just need to find some additional support. So let's go to the subcommittee for any questions they may have. Mr. Sawyer, I'll start with you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions, just comment.
Okay. Vice Mayor Fleming, do you have any questions on the presentation?
I do not. I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. The first one, I'll try to kind of go in the order that they were presented. On slide 5, you talked about some of the evacuation, some of the best practices, pre-17 and post-2017? Because I know we had a lot of comments specifically about the evacuation, and I know fire department, police department put a lot of efforts into identifying evacuation zones, but yeah, we still heard a lot of people, specifically in Oakmont, why did it take so long? It was gridlock. But it's my understanding things did change and you did implement some things. So could you talk about the differences that the fire department incorporated in evacuation from the 2017 experience to the 2020 experience that we had?
Absolutely. So in 2017, like I spoke about, we did not have access to the IPAWS system. So the city didn't have the ability to use that integrated system where we were hitting the emergency alert system and the IPAWS system. We also did not have pre-designated evacuation zones at that point. So really we were at the mercy of the county at that point. And when it came to evacuations, we didn't have enough warning that this fire was coming in town. Again, it traveled 12 miles in just under 3 hours. And so we ended up dedicating a lot of our resources to doing evacuations versus actually engaged fighting fire. This year, when we got to the glass fire, we had the pre-designated zones, and with the additional situational awareness that we had via the cameras, the weather stations, we had additional resources on the road already for upstaffing because of the weather conditions that we were facing. We actually started pushing evacuation warnings and notifications out before we even left our homes to report to the EOC or to the command post. So we were much further ahead of the game in this scenario. And while there was gridlock, it was all part of sort of a timed process. We did it in phases through the evacuation zones that we had dedicated already. And so we were able to get people out of the way, and there was some gridlock, and we pushed them out early because we knew there was going to be traffic and we knew there was going to be that problem, but we were working very coordinated with law enforcement, both the sheriff's office and Santa Rosa Police Department, to make sure that that process was out of the way by the time the fire got into town, which ended up being successful. So was there traffic? Yes. But was there traffic when the fire was encroaching upon those vehicles? No. Or upon those homes? No. So using the evacuation zones gives us the ability to already have pre-designated zones loaded into the IPAWS alerting system or the SOCO alert system. So it's very quick and very rapid. People know where they're at, or they can go to the short URL and find out where they're at very quickly. We push them out very early, and then the traffic flow, succeeds, and we end up with a clear situation where you can go and engage the fire when you need to engage the fire. So we're continuing to make advancements there, and I think you're going to see on the December 15th study session, you're going to see some recommendations for even more advancement in that area, particularly. And the Streets Department through TPW has some very good ideas on how we can make that even better, and you'll see that on the 15th. So I would say that the evacuations were holistically a success in 2020, and we're just going to continue to make those better.
Great, thank you. I do like the little teaser. You'll see that on the 15th, can hardly wait. And then could you also explain the difference? You mentioned early in the presentation about the vehicle replacement and some funding for that. Can you explain? I'm somewhat familiar with vehicle replacement, but I also know sometimes some of the larger equipment, like the ladder trucks, because that's, $1 million plus. Explain the difference about what we're talking here with the wildfire equipment you're talking about. Those are ongoing vehicle replacement vehicles or one-time costs similar to the ladder trucks?
So they're one-time cost because it's 12 to 15 years to replace them. And so there will be a replacement cost. So it kind of depends on how you define one time, right? And so we're considering them a one-time cost because of how long we'll be able to use them. And then we need to inject that ongoing funding into the vehicle replacement fund in order to, in 12 to 15 years, we can start replacing them a little bit better so we don't have to come back and ask for a one-time huge capital item like a ladder truck. So that whole system needs to be improved, and we've been working with TPW on how to improve that and what that looks like. And a lot of times we're using strike team reimbursement funding to buy fire engines and fire trucks. We were down in that area last year, but we're obviously going to be much higher in it this year. So we get a little creative on how we have to buy those things, but in the future, we really need to have everything laid out, and we have the ability, and we already have it done to where we can amortize those costs and make sure that when a fire engine needs to be replaced, we have the ability to replace it. So it's going to be the request for additional funding going into that program, so we don't face those big one-time capital asks in the future.
Great. And I appreciate that strategy. And my last question on slide 15, you mentioned the COPE program because, those of us on council frequently get questions about that. Where would we direct folks for that? Because I wasn't really clear as to the current status of the COPE program.
The current status of the COPE program, it's alive and well. It's very much a community-based program at this point. So some might call it a catch and release program is sort of the generalized industry term for it, but it's essentially giving the community the tools to build their own program. That can be done through our emergency management division here in the fire department. So Emergency Manager Bregman or Brittany Miller have the ability to get that information out. But in looking at building that program out, making it stronger and really building resiliency in the community, that's going to take additional personnel because obviously those two have a lot on their plates already. And then so does our community outreach specialist and some people in our prevention bureau. So we don't have the ability to really build that out. And if the council wants to see a hardcore, very, very involved COPE or CERT program, we're going to need bodies to go with that.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. So we're now taking public comment on item 5.1, the Santa Rosa Fire Department Wildland Resiliency and Response Strategic Plan. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9. Madam Host, would you please facilitate public comment on item 5.1?
Of course. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. If you are participating in the meeting from the Spanish channel in Zoom, we have an interpreter on standby on the English channel to assist during your public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please be sure to pause throughout your comment to allow for interpretation. Those using interpreter support will be afforded additional time for your public comment as required by the Brown Act. For Spanish speakers, at the time you hear your name called, turn off the Spanish channel to make your public comment. This icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. Mayor, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Rostrow, did you need any specific feedback from this subcommittee? I know Mr. Sawyer said he wanted to make some comments. Did you need any information from the subcommittee, or is this just information about what will be coming in future council meetings?
It's really just information. We wanted to be able to present to you what this ask looked like. So when it comes to the December 15th study session and you're seeing really the global picture of what we're asking for, we wanted to make sure you understood the specific nuts and bolts of what this $2.75 million ask was and why it was apart from the $5.25 million ask for the vegetation management program. So nothing specific. It was more informational and make sure that you could explain to your constituents or to your other council members exactly what that ask was and what it means to them. And we could explain that more that day as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sawyer, you wanted to make some comments?
I will be brief. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Chief, for a really comprehensive and informative presentation, which included some numbers with some costs involved, which of course are always very important to hear up front. And thank you, Mayor, for bringing up what we learned from Oakmont and the early and organized evacuation. I've heard a number of times how important that was for the protection of Oakmont and which led to a very, relatively speaking, a small loss of structures. And so thank you very much for that. It just proves that we learn from our experiences, and we'll continue to do that as we move into the future. And just my thanks for a great presentation. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Fleming, did you have any comments you would like to make on this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. What I wanted to say was that I really appreciated the special focus on vegetation management, and that I thought that the presentation was very organized and thorough. So just wanted to thank you.
Great.
That's all.
Thank you for that. I also appreciated this information because, and again, as Mr. Sawyer said, seeing the actual data I think it will really help inform future council decisions about what our new reality is. So with that, we will take a 10-minute break before we go on to item 5.2. So reconvene at 10:15. 10:15 reconvene. All right, there's Mr. Sawyer. Madam Clerk, we'll reconvene our subcommittee meeting. Could we do a roll call, please?
Happy to. Councilmember Sawyer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Fleming.
Here.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Here.
All members are accounted for.
Okay, we'll call item 5.2. Police Chief Navarro, this is your item, I believe.
Mayor, if I may interject, can I please have a brief moment to set up the interpretation again?
Absolutely. Let me know when you're ready to roll.
Thank you. One moment.
Hola.
Hi, Zayomara. I have assigned you to the Spanish channel. If you wouldn't mind turning your video on and just giving me a thumbs up so that I know that you are on the channel. Perfect. Thank you very much. And the Spanish channel is now open, and those wishing to rejoin the Spanish channel may do so now. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, Chief, I think you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mayor, Vice Mayor Fleming, and Councilmember Sawyer, thank you very much. Rainer Navarro, Chief of Police. So we have popping up right now our presentation. And this presentation is really a presentation to provide historical information and current staffing and future needs as we move forward with our staffing issues. If we'll go to the next slide, please. This next slide is a general overview of our organization. As you can see, we have three main divisions, and then we have an administrative division, which is our ASO and a few of our admin support teams. But we have 254 staff members currently. 177 of those are sworn, and 77 are civilian employees. We have about 54 employees in the technical service division. That includes records, dispatch, and our IT area and crime analysis. And then we have 43 employees in special services, which includes all of our investigations and background investigators. The bulk of our staff is in the field services division, and that includes uniform patrols, our support teams with that. And what you don't see is the numbers that are really affiliated with some of our collateral assignments that our staff is a part of. So we have about 23 field training officers who address our training for new recruits that are coming in into the department. We have 18 SWAT members who are trained on a regular basis to address emergency needs that may come up throughout the year. And we have 17 hostage negotiation team members who work with SWAT to respond to calls for service such as like barricaded subjects or any type of significant search warrants that we have to go through in case they're needed. We also have 38 officers who are on a collateral assignment with the mobile field force. So they work their normal assignments, and then when needed, they are reassigned to the mobile field force. And then the other piece that is not really brought out on this org chart is the incident management team. And this is it's a team of 10 people who are pulled from their different assignments. So it could be special assignments or it could be patrol to plan and prepare for large scale incidents and emergency planning. This IMT team played a significant role in our rollout of all of our COVID procedures and protocols when we first went into the emergency for the pandemic back in early 2020. They also play a huge role in the planning and preparation and execution of our response to the fire emergencies over the last several years. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a historical overview of our staffing since 2005. As you can see, in 2005, we had 271 budgeted positions. 184 were sworn and 87 were civilian. In 2006, we hit our the highest point with our staffing, where we had 190 sworn officers and 91 civilian positions. And since then, we have seen a significant reduction throughout the police department. So since 2006, we have lost in total 27 positions, 13 sworn, and 14 civilian employees. In 2009, there was a significant dip, and there was where we lost 23 employee positions, and that had a direct impact on our services that continue to this day. These cuts included 10 sworn and a variety of civilian positions. One example of the significant change that occurred back in 2009 was that our Records Bureau, which used to be a 24/7 operation, went to basically business hours with Sundays off. And some of that, or the work that was lost for the some of the overnight business that they were doing, such as taking on low priority calls in the middle of the night, doing warrant and want confirmations. Those were moved to dispatch, and taking missing persons went back to patrol. And that workload remains in both patrol and dispatch since 2009. In the past 2 years, you can see that we have lost 12 positions. So in 2019, our budget was reduced, and we had to cut 3 community service officers, a research and program coordinator, which handled grants in our department. We also lost a police tech and a personnel supervisor who was handling our recruitment and our human resources piece of the department. This year, earlier this year in July, we ended up cutting 4 officers, a communications dispatcher, and our IT supervisor position. In addition to that, we have frozen 2 Measure O officer positions because of the reduction in revenue from Measure O. So our challenge as a command staff is to look at how we do business and provide quality safety for the community with the increasing demands that come with our public safety and the reduction of the staff that we have, and it becomes very difficult. So we reevaluate how to best provide the services at every rotation, which is pretty much it's every 6 months. And the staffing reductions do make it difficult to address the strategic priorities that we have within the department. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a synopsis of our calls for service in relation to our staffing over the years. As you can see, there's been an increase in calls over the years, and that is the blue line. The gray line shows an increase, steady increase in our population within the city. And then the dark line is our staffing. So we have seen an increase in both calls and population, and a decrease in our staffing for the last 15 years overall. The studies, we do staffing studies, and we'll get into that in just a bit, but our studies estimate that our calls for service will increase at about 2.7% per year. We did check with the city's Planning and Economic Development Department, and the PED projects that the city's population will increase at about 3.6 over the next 5 years. There are plans for higher density housing in the downtown area. We're seeing rebuilding continue in the fire burn areas, and there's additional construction with high density housing throughout the city. The other things that we're seeing that are happening is with SMART, being coming into the city now, and with the future airport expansion, We do anticipate that that's going to bring more people to Santa Rosa to visit and to in the tourism realm. We are seeing a increase in legal mandates and workloads, and that makes it difficult for our staff to complete work in a timely manner. And this work is impacting both sworn and civilian throughout the department. One example of this is that our department goal is to maintain a high quality of response time. And so that would be responding to emergency calls, which we deem priority 1 calls, to respond to those in less than 6 minutes. The average for some of the larger California cities, both Northern and Southern California, are around 5.5 minutes. In 2019, our average response time for priority 1 calls was 6 minutes and 48 seconds. So we are seeing the decrease in our staffing in both our sworn and our dispatcher bureau is directly impacting what we're doing and how we can respond to these calls for service. Next slide, please. So over the last 10 years or so, Mayor, I'm sure you're familiar with this. We have used a staffing study that has been recommended by law enforcement associations and the Department of Justice. It's an allocation study, and what it looks at is to how to best allocate our resources for maximum efficiency. What we're looking for are for patrol officers to have an even split time of 30 minutes reactive. So they're responding to a call for service that's coming into dispatch and they're going out to address those calls. And then 30 minutes of proactive time where they're working on beat projects. They may be working on traffic issues in their particular beat, involved in community engagement, or anything else that might be coming up that they need to take a proactive role in. The last staffing study was, or the first staffing study that we did was in 2015, which covered 2010 to 2013. And the last staffing study update that we did was in 2018. That included data from 2015 to 2018. That study at the time, so 2 years ago, showed that our patrol officers averaged about 31.5 minutes of reactive time. And so we were doing pretty good. However, in order to maintain this level of service, we have had to continually cut in other areas of the department, and that's having a direct impact on some of our specialized teams that address priorities for our department and for the city. The reduction of staff requires overtime to address these priorities. And what we're seeing right now is we're experiencing fatigue and difficulty in managing overtime for the department. We're looking at a lot of different ways to try to minimize the impact on patrol. I mean, we're looking at technology to try to address, how calls for service come in, what calls for service may go to maybe a telephone report writing or be handled by records. And we're also looking at a mental illness and homeless response team that would be outside of a sworn response allocation. But what we will continue to see is even if patrol stops handling some of these calls will still go into dispatch, especially as our population increases. And with dispatch, we're already averaging overtime at about 158 hours per year per dispatcher. So we have we are in a situation where we have to use overtime to meet the demands throughout the department. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is a slide showing our comparable cities. This is another way of looking at staffing and how you address the needs. This is not a this was seen as not as efficient as the allocation model, but it is another way of looking at it. The national average for police departments per the Department of Justice right now, or as of 2017, was 2.4 officers per 1,000 residents. None of our comparable cities meet that goal. And if you look at the comparable cities here, if you look at the average, if I did my math right, the average is about 1.2, and we're at about actually right about 1 per 1,000 based on our current estimated population. And as you know, we just went through a census, and so we'll be looking forward to hearing the information that comes back regarding our 2020 census data. The current staffing that we have does not include 2 frozen Measure O officers or the staff who are out on injury at this point. The other thing that we use these comparable cities for is to show, who we're competing against, because these are our main, we believe our main competitors when we look at recruiting. And then we have several other local departments that are also basically in the hunt for the same qualified professionals as we, when we address attrition rates. And we'll talk about recruitment in a few slides, but what we are seeing is that there are less applicants that are coming in for all portions of our department. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a visual on how much our special assignments are impacted by staffing shortages. As I had stated before, what we do is we try to maintain that 30-30 split in patrol. But in order to do that, we have to take from other areas of the department or do it through overtime. And so over the last several years, we have really used our additional resources in our special assignments to really take and help patrol out to maintain that 30-30 split. So we, command staff continue to try to balance the department communities and community priorities and try to figure out, which special assignments are needed at the time and how we best augment patrol. But these shortages do reduce our capacity to address homelessness, mental health, traffic, community engagement, and our other areas such as property crimes, narcotics, and gangs. Our current staffing study that we have, it doesn't show the entire picture because it doesn't allow for, what happens when we have those large events such as increasing sideshows on a weekly basis, some of the beat projects that we may have to deal with, the increased issues with homelessness that we're dealing with, and our IMT teams that come out and deal with events on a regular basis. So our events, we have contract overtime that we utilize where officers will go out and they'll be assigned a large event such as the Ironman or the fair or things of that nature, the Wednesday night market. But there's a lot of work that's done in the background, which is not being paid for through contract overtime, and we have to take that. We have to take those resources, and we basically utilize our resources without somebody else paying for that. And that's the IMT coming in to make sure that we're putting everything in place to make sure that the event is safe for our community. The next staffing study, what we're seeing is that our next staffing study needs to include information for our special teams to see how we adequately keep that information and or keep the information so we know where to adequately staff our special assignments without burdening them when we have to address patrol shortages. And then with the several fires that we've seen over the last several years, that's another major event that we have just really not been expecting. And that's an all call for all of our staff that come out for those events. And then we end up going on a 12 on, 12 off shift for multiple weeks. Next slide, please. So again, our reduced staffing impacts our investigative units and other collateral assignments, and this could cause a delay in our investigations, or in some cases sometimes cases not being actually assigned. Some of the things that we've had to do over the last year was, number one, we just recently pulled our detective out of the Sonoma County Auto Task Force. And we have done so several times over the last several years to help with staffing as needed. The other thing that we've done is earlier this year was we had to disband our gang crimes team to address shortages in patrol. And we have also done the same, or we are doing the same now with our school resource officers, moving them back into patrol for the next rotation. An example of our investigative impacts can come from our property crimes team. I checked in with our supervisor for that, and our clearance rates have fallen about 12% for property crimes. And again, to meet the demands of our emergency periods in 2020, 2019 and 2020, including Kincaid, the Kincaid fire, COVID, and then also the recent glass fire, detectives are commonly reassigned to patrol to assist with those duties. Next slide, please. This is a quick overview of how our worker comp claims and sworn disability retirements impact our staffing levels over the year. The current 2020 data that you see in front of you is through October 1st of 2020. As you can see, the sworn disability retirements, we've seen an increase, and we've had 7 in 2020, and we average well into the 40s for worker comp claims throughout the last 5 years. The other thing that this does not show is how COVID is impacting what we are doing. And with COVID, again, I'm sure you're well aware that we had a few positives at the very beginning of the emergency, and we've done very well at keeping the virus out of our department since April. But we do quarantine our officers if and when they do come in contact with somebody who we feel may be positive or is exhibiting flu-like symptoms, and or if family members are exhibiting symptoms, our staff will quarantine. And so that's not included in these particular numbers here, but it does impact our staffing levels, and we respond by, again, addressing it through taking people out of special assignments or through mandatory overtime. We do our best to anticipate attrition rates. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the last slide, which is related to recruitment. Before we get there, though, if we can go to the next slide. So this is a visual on what we did as a command staff. We did a broad SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of our department related to staffing. Under our strengths, I think the biggest thing is that our employees are the most important asset that we have. We have a very dedicated team of employees throughout the department in every single division who are experienced, and they're very quick to respond to the many emergencies that we have. And we've seen that, again, most recently during the glass fire, where it became an on-call or an all-call out for all of our staff. and they were coming out within the hour to go out and evacuate people in the Rincon Valley and the Oakmont area. Our officers are cross-trained, and so again, these collateral assignments, they're not specific assignments where people are assigned to, and it takes up 40 hours of their time. They are collateral, and so they're doing their normal jobs, and then take on these added this added workload to address the needs of our community safety. So we do a really good job there. We are also very good at recruiting people when we have the ability to do so. And we are flexible. So again, that comes back to the dedicated employees that we have. What we have seen is with the reduction in staff, our staff has been flexible and we have been able to move people around. But that does come at a price. The staffing shortages are significant. And again, it's causing overtime throughout the department, and it's impacting the teams that we've talked about, which focus on city and department priorities. I'll be completely honest with you, our morale is very low. And the morale is low largely because of the added workload, the mandatory overtime to address the staffing shortages within patrol, and then also the lack of special assignment opportunities. So on an annual basis, we will test for potential special assignment openings. And we've continually adjusted and pivoted because of the needs of patrol. And so we go without having new people move into these special assignments. We do see some opportunities. Again, we have a strong community engagement, which does help us when we want to recruit new staff. We've had opportunities in the past to work with some of our nonprofit teams and to get the word out that we are recruiting. We are seeing we're searching for the new response model to mental illness and homeless calls to do that with a crisis team. And you'll be hearing another presentation on an update on Cahoots with Captain Cregan after we're done here. But that's an opportunity for us to make some changes and to take a little bit of the load off of our patrol teams. However, as Captain Cregan has reported out before, it's probably 3 to 5% of our calls for service. And we have an opportunity to continue to look at how do we consolidate services with our other agencies. We've had some strategic conversations regarding our dispatchers. We have, we're currently at 23 dispatchers. Our staffing study has stated that we need to have 28. The other thing that I neglected to mention was that our last staffing study that we had showed that we needed to add 4 officers in 2018, and we've continued to reduce that number as we've moved ahead. So so we're looking at consolidating services. The other thing that we've done is in the past, we've had shared resources with other county agencies for, again, the auto task force. We used to have a gang unit, a countywide gang unit, but again, we've consolidated some of those to address some of the staffing issues that we have right now. Some of the threats that we're seeing moving forward, again, lack of special assignments, that impacts our recruiting. The staff that I've hired over the last year, when I sit down with them and ask them, why do you want to be here at the city of Santa Rosa or the Santa Rosa Police Department? Number one, a lot of them are from this particular area and they want to come back or they want to start their career here. But the other big thing that comes up, especially with laterals, is that they see us as one of the larger agencies, and we have the ability to have specific assignments to give them a lot of opportunities to do different things and to be challenged and to work in areas such as narcotics, which we're having significant issues with fentanyl, or addressing homeless issues and working with nonprofits there, or working in traffic and addressing our priorities there. And so we really see our special assignments as a recruiting tool, and it becomes more difficult when we lose those teams. We're also seeing a increase in mandates that impacts both our officers who are out on the street, our investigators, because they have to add more information in either their reports or provide more information to either a victim or a witness, and it takes up more of their time when they're doing their investigations. The other thing that we're seeing is an increase in PRAs, Public Record Acts, and also more mandates in our records section. So our civilian staff and our support staff that assist our officers and civilian field personnel, their duties are starting to increase past the point of our ability to meet certain timelines and thresholds. One of the other things that we're dealing with right now is the current perception of law enforcement. We've been, for several months, we've been working on a community empowerment plan and meeting with community members, but the perception of law enforcement right now, it's very difficult to hire or have people come in as a new officer. Again, we compete with several other agencies to recruit qualified applicants. And as far as numbers go, we used to cap our trainee applicants for officers at 500 because we would easily get to 500 or more people wanting to come into the law enforcement profession. We now have less than 200 applicants over the last couple of years for new trainee officers who are applying to become officers. Again, part of that could be perception, but we've already realized last year that we were facing a trend of people who want to be their own bosses, wanted to be entrepreneurs, or going into some type of private sector. So we're seeing some difficulties in the number of people that are coming into law enforcement. The other thing that we're seeing is that we do have more staff that are looking at retiring early or leaving the area. The trend across law enforcement is that officers are moving up their retirement dates, and we see a potential to lose a vast amount of experience as people leave earlier. I'm currently aware of, we just had an officer leave last month for out of state, and I anticipate having at least another one that will be leaving very soon for going out of state to another law enforcement agency. And then the other thing, the other thing I wanted to point out as far as the threat is, being able to maintain that competitive recruitment ability with the budget concerns that we have. So, how do we address, competitive pay, and how do we address the reduction of staff that we have because of the budget concerns that we're currently facing right now. Next slide, please. So what we're doing in terms of recruitment, we are currently recruiting for 2 dispatchers, field evidence tech, and a couple of police officers right now. I think we've talked about this in other meetings, but it takes a very long time to recruit people for the law enforcement profession. It can take up to 6 months to recruit and complete the hiring process for our department. New officers take about 4 months at the academy and then spend another 4 to 6 months in the training program and have an 18-month probationary period. The next police academy is in March 2021. So by the time we send, 3 to 4 officers in the March academy, they are not going to be available for solo status until 2022 probably. And then new dispatchers can even take longer. Their training program, because they have to train on Channel 1, which is our dispatching officers, and radio or collecting information from phone calls and all the technology that they have to deal with. Their training program can last up to and over a year sometimes. If we do have to prioritize a large recruitment, we can do that. We did it last year. We can borrow from our patrol and special assignments to work on backgrounds, and we can also contract with an outside background agency or company. And what we usually see is that about 1 out of 3 will pass a background. So it takes a large number of people within that pool to get qualified individuals. Again, we do our best to anticipate attrition rates in the next 14 months. What I can tell you is that we have about 25 sworn officers who are eligible to retire. It's a little bit more difficult to try to strategize on the civilian side. And again, some of the sworn may not leave within these next 14 months, but I do anticipate several, probably up to 8 to 9 at least, leaving in the first 6 or 7 months of next year. We have updated our recruitment materials to try to assist in our recruitment efforts. Our dispatchers, they have a new testing platform. It's called Critical, which helps us streamline the recruitment process. Last year, for our trainees, that we currently have 15 trainees in our field training program. We worked with Sonoma State and the Santa Rosa Junior College. We went over to those classrooms to try to recruit people from the colleges. We worked with Lo Cien, and we started a program called Run with the Recruiter, so people got an idea of some of the physical nature that they may have to deal with when going through the academy and becoming a new officer. And we still hope to establish a thriving internship in the next few years to help with the recruitment efforts, let people get a very firm understanding of what police work is like, or law enforcement work is like, and to hopefully see them come back to Santa Rosa in the future. So again, a synopsis of this, this is really largely for information. We have lost several positions over the last several years. We are dealing with the shortage right now. We are not where we should be based on the 2018 Edico study, which showed that we had to actually increase by 4 officers, and we've actually lost several over the last couple years. So with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief, for that presentation. And again, just to confirm, feedback that you want from the subcommittee, this is more just information, but is there any specific feedback you'd like us to provide to you?
This is really towards really more information for you. There's been a lot of dialogue about, budget, not only citywide, but specifically directed towards the police department and law enforcement. And we wanted to give you an idea of where we are and what we've been dealing with. And we have seen a reduction in our budget over the last several years, and it is impacting our public safety. So I think the direction for us, part of it is information, but part of it is if there's a specific direction in priorities that we're going to have to deal with, because we are limiting and reducing our special assignments, which is going to impact some of these, high profile issues that come up on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go to the subcommittee first. Mr. Sawyer, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I do, and thank you, Chief Navarro. This has to do mainly with recruitment. I'm curious about how much the reduction in the academy pool has affected not only recruitment our hiring ability, because you can recruit, and then you ultimately have to make a decision as to whether to hire. So how much is that the reduction in those participating in the academy affecting our ability to hire?
So the academy has seen, they've had to delay some of their academy classes because of COVID and move things around a little bit. But what we try to do is they reach out to the law enforcement agencies that usually partner with them and try to get an idea of how many spots to reserve for that particular agency. And so based on our, when we start recruiting, we're trying to recruit very far in advance, and we can give them an idea of how many spots that we want. So the last two academies that occurred earlier this year that were delayed, we had 6 in one and 7 in another. And we anticipate, based on our current recruitment, that we're probably going to have maybe 4 to 5 in the March Academy. But then again, those 4 officers are not going to be seen until 2022. The impact on our recruitment doesn't necessarily have to go along with the academy. It's really what we're seeing as a trend. And so we are seeing a lot less people putting in for being a police officer. So again, we used to cap out at 500 because we couldn't take any more. Now we're seeing less than 200 apply for the police officer trainee position. So those are trends. And even if you took out COVID, you took out the current police perception, last year we only had less than 200. So as far as the academy, most of them, we don't, that doesn't particularly address or have an impact on how we're hiring. Most of the people in the academy are sponsored, so or sponsored by agencies. Mm-hmm. So it's mostly the issues that we're having is that we're having less and less people come in. So how do you address how do you tell people this is a great profession and it's challenging, but there's also we have to look at what opportunities do they have here as opposed to another agency. What are they getting paid? What are the benefits financially to go into the law enforcement profession, and balance that with the other mandates and the added duties that we have.
Thank you. And my next question has to do with the public perception of policing. And I know Santa Rosa has always maintained a very high level, very high bar of which to before you can be hired by the Santa Rosa PD. And I think that continues to serve us well, because we want the best of the best wherever we can find them. How is that, how would you say that the public perception of policing is affecting not only the cadets' willingness to come into the program, but also our laterals?
Well, it's having a huge, it's having a big issue. I mean, we had one trainee that decided to quit basically during the academy, and just felt that it was too much, and so we lost one trainee while he was in the academy over the spring and summer.
He was affiliated.
He was one of ours. So okay. we had sponsored him in, and he decided not to pursue law enforcement after the first week or so of his academy experience. The other issue is with the added issues that are going on. I think we have. I think there's a silent. I think we have a very good relationship with most of our community, but there is a lot of there has been a lot of backlash with law enforcement in general. Our officers and our staff, we do a great job, and they put 110% in their efforts every day, and we still have a very good reputation. But it becomes difficult when when you're competing against the same pool of or with other agencies within the same pool of people who are looking on where they're going to go, and then they have to decide whether or not they're going to move based on their financial situation or potential. If you reduce staff, are they going to come to Santa Rosa, and are they going to be the first person that's going to be laid off? That sort of thing. So it does impact the number of people, especially number of laterals that come in when we are looking at trying to recruit and hire qualified people.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. My next question has to do with the diverse workforce. And I know that since I've been on the council, one of each of our chiefs has tried very hard to create a diverse workforce. And of course, you can't force people to work for you, and there are all sorts of issues around recruitment anyway. It's an expensive place to live, Sonoma County and Santa Rosa, and that doesn't help in any of our recruitments. What unique or specialized processes are you using to try to attract a more diverse workforce in the Santa Rosa PD?
Yes, sir. So again, I briefly touched on some of the things that we had tried to do last year. Number one, we had reached out and attended classes over at Sonoma State University and Santa Rosa Junior College to try to get, look at potential people with some education. The other thing that we did was work with Lo Cien to have them push out information to their stakeholders to provide to try to increase the number of Latinx applicants to come into the police department. And then what was really exciting for me is last year we had an officer who came up with the Run with a Recruiter program, and the first morning where we went out and we ran with probably about 10 individuals who were looking at, wanting to come into the process. I met with one of the people that was running was a female from the west side of Santa Rosa who grew up in a largely Hispanic neighborhood, and she had brought two friends the second time we went out running. And so those are I could see that we're having success in starting to push out more information to some of our local neighborhoods to address some of that. So, but it doesn't change the number of qualified people. We're trying to increase the pool of people to recruit, but we still maintain a level of that level of quality that we're looking for.
Thank you. I'm almost finished. There was a time when we were moving out of state and actually interstate to certain organizations or groups of people coming together that have to do with employee pools, kind of like specialized gatherings of people that are looking for particular employment. Are we going out of state or going out of county at this time? I know that it's expensive to do that, and I think we did used to go into trade fairs, et cetera. Are we currently able to afford that kind of outreach?
Well, right now it's kind of difficult with doing any of that with COVID. We are using social media as much as we can, and we have a large amount of people following us, and so we're using that to really expand outside of our particular region. The other thing that we are going to be doing is we're going to be working with the Office of Community Engagement, and we're going to be working on what the future holds with the city diversity, equity and inclusion consultant that we're looking at. And so that's going to be part of our policing practices, how we hire people, and how we hire that diverse workforce. So we're looking at several different methods, and again, we're continuing to reach out to some of our community stakeholders to find out how do we get more information out there.
I appreciate that. And of course, sticker shock in living in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County is always an issue once we leave the basic surrounds of this county. And finally, has to do with competitive salaries. And it really does kind of tie into our ability to recruit. How much is the issue of competitive salaries and just our cost of living in general, how much does that contribute to our inability at times to recruit?
It's a significant issue, especially when it becomes when we're looking for lateral officers. And again, when we put a trainee into the academy, it can take up to 2 years from the recruitment process to the time they go solo. And so as we're looking at attrition and if we have people, leaving in the next few months, we're trying to entice lateral officers to come. And so it becomes difficult when, they're looking at how to balance their competitive pay or what we're paying to, how do we, are they going to be able to move to Sonoma County or are they going to be able to make that jump from their last department to come here and live here? So it does play a role in how we address especially lateral officers. And then also, even with, our civilian staff, anybody that comes to Sonoma County, it can be very difficult, like that sticker shock, like you said. So competitive pay and benefits plays a huge role in how to attract professionals who can come in and help us immediately do the job. And then from a new employee standpoint, if somebody's a brand new dispatcher who's never worked a dispatching job, or a new officer or new technician, you're still looking at, would they, can they get a job in, Nevada or in up north in Mendocino County, or, going east of us and make a living there as opposed to coming to Sonoma County. So we're continuing to compete. It goes past those 10 comparable cities that we have there. It's regional, and it is something to factor in.
Yeah, thank you. And a final comment. I know that our stats used to indicate that we would hire about 1 out of every 100 applicants. I'm hoping that one way or another we can maintain that high bar because we need and we deserve the best we can find when it comes to our law enforcement officers. And I'm hoping that 1 out of 100 kind of, as difficult as it can be to jump over that hurdle, I think it pays off highly when we recruit and hire the best of the best of our police officers. So thank you, Chief. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Fleming, do you have any questions for the Chief?
I do. Thank you, Chief Navarro, and I do appreciate that it is difficult to recruit. My questions are around is like lining up the different data points that you put forward on a timeline in terms of what makes it difficult to recruit. And from our last conversation, I remember you stating that the most recent recruitment was in February of 2020. Is that still the most recent recruitment?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, so then, what I'm wondering is, if we're not conflating a couple of different data points that we can't really disentangle until there's a recruitment that takes place during COVID. And so my question for you is, do you believe that, what you stated before in a previous meeting around increase of people wanting to be their own bosses and be entrepreneurial while we had record unemployment during February, and that people tend to be more drawn toward, government and public safety careers during downturns, that we can really tease those out and accurately provide a picture without doing a recruitment during COVID?
Well, Yeah, I'll try to pick out what I think I'm hearing. You may have to clarify that a little bit, but our lateral recruitment is ongoing, and so we are seeing a reduction in numbers in laterals. So again, we did have 3 laterals come on this year, but right now we're not seeing a lot. Our entry level recruitment, that was the ones going into the academy, that was in February. And so, you know, we don't have, you know, again, we're looking at right now, maybe 4 people that may be able to get into the March Academy. You know, I think that we have we'll have to look at this whole year of 2020 and kind of do an analysis on what that looks like and what that means for us as we move forward. But I can't tell you that we're seeing it. There is a reduction, and it is becoming more difficult. And I think the bigger issue is that we're seeing more and more attrition. So we're seeing more and more people. There's more and more people talking about leaving. Again, I have a couple of staff members who were not of age, and I do know that are leaving the department.
Okay. Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is that, you know, this has been such an unusual year. And so I think that, you know, what I'll be curious to know is how a recruitment goes going forward, because, you know, we've had some factors that might lead one to think that we'll have increased interest in the academy for new recruits, and some factors that would, you know, lead us in the other direction of decreased interest. So I think at this point in time, it's just very difficult to know for new applicants. And the other question that I have is, well, actually, I have one more question regarding that one, which is, do we have a planned recruitment for the foreseeable future?
Again, we have a continuous open recruitment for our lateral officers. We're always looking for officers to come in. We are looking at one coming up hopefully for July. Some of that will depend on, you know, if the academy can actually operate. So, you know, there is some of that, but we're hoping that we can open up a recruitment soon for the July academy, and we will, you know, we will be using again our social media posts, our partnerships with the community to get that information out, and then we're going to be again. I think the other you know, the other tool that we have that we didn't have last year was we have the Office of Community Engagement that we can also lean on, and some of the you know, opportunities with the diversity and equity program that we are looking at in the future. But for the July Academy, we should be opening up fairly soon, and we're hoping to, you know, we'll be seeing what the pool of candidates are with that.
Well, I do think that will be very informational in terms of this anomaly of a year, and that we'll have to track these things for a little bit of time to get a good snapshot of whether the pre-existing pre-COVID trend is a trend, or if it might be reversed or in some way. The next question, the last question I have is, you mentioned that morale is low, and I can certainly understand why. I'm wondering if that is anecdotal or based on some metrics that you and your department use.
We have not done a survey yet. It is anecdotal, but I've had many people, you know, I have an open door policy, and I've heard from several people. And although they, you know, they love the law enforcement profession, it's just very difficult. And we've had, again, increasing mandates, you know, mandatory overtime. And then with mandatory overtime, and again, just with all of the emergencies coming up, and the information does come from, again, it's not a survey, but I have monthly meetings with each of our labor groups, and those labor groups have they are providing me the information from their groups about the low morale and the reasons why.
And thank you. And have they stated the causes of anything apart from the mandatory overtime that is contributing to low morale?
Mandatory overtime, shortage of or reduction of special assignments, and the ability to do other duties within the department outside of the main patrol. There's always a pay the pay conversation, so pay and benefits. And they just feel that the other big thing right now over the last several months is that they just feel that there's a lack of support, for the work that they do. And, the work that they do is they do a tremendous job. I think they've shown time and time again, both sworn and civilian, the response through all of these emergencies, and with the perception right now, they just feel that there's not a lot of support within the city that goes to them, and so that's the other piece of the low morale issue.
Okay, and when you say within the city, are you talking about city leadership and the residents of the city, or both, one or the other?
I think it could be. I think it really is both. And they're not hearing a lot. I think it's been very important to listen to the community over the past several months, and it's difficult when when there's not an opportunity to really talk about the great things that we've been doing. And so we're looking at how do we get the information out about what our teams do. We're looking at social media posts, but it's difficult when we're silent on what's happening, and we're waiting for reports to come out, and so it's we want to get through this, and we know we can learn and do and continue to strive for excellence, and but they do a great job as it is right now, and it's just difficult for them to hear the negative, a lot of negative comments.
Okay, thank you so much for the information.
Thank you, Chief. I've got a couple of questions. During your presentation on the department staffing from investigative and special unit totals, it was helpful information regarding the breakdown you had from motors all the way to NARPS, and you just had how many positions were vacant, but I couldn't find any information about, okay, how many are still there? Because I know we still have motors. So would you be able to provide, and I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but get that information as to how many positions are actually in each of those special assignments, to kind of give us a little context. So when you're down 3 motors since pretty much 2016, we went from, what had we been to what haven't? Because I know traffic has been one of the large contributors of calls for service in the city.
Yeah, so I do know that, for traffic, we have 5 motors right now. And so we're down 3. And so the traffic department, they are key in addressing some of our, again, number one, traffic complaints. We deal with traffic complaints throughout the city. They are the ones that handle our grants. So Office of Traffic Safety grants. They are instrumental in addressing some of our larger issues like sideshows. So they were the point team basically to address some of the local or the more recent sideshow events. And so we really rely on them to work on traffic safety. We have a full DVSA team right now. If you look at, I believe it was slide 8, DVSA is always busy, right? They're our busiest team. We have one we're missing one detective in DVSA, which is domestic violence, sexual assault. We have 3 in property crimes. We used to have 6. We don't have anybody in gangs right now. And we had, at one time, we had 7 gang officers and a sergeant. We've been reducing that. And then we currently have none. But then we increased, and we have a full violent crimes team by moving some of our detectives over there to reprioritize in that particular area. Downtown enforcement team, we have 6 because of some of the issues, and we know that that's been a priority with homeless issues. And so we try to maintain that. You know, again, we had 5 school resource officers. Last year, we had taken 1 officer. We couldn't refill the one that Officer Morrison, when she retired, we went down to 4, and COVID then hit, so it was right at that beginning of the year. We went down to 4. We maintained that 4. We've recently just frozen 2 positions, and then the other positions are going to be going back to patrol with the shortages that we're having. And then accident investigators, I think we have, I believe we have all 4 right now. They work nights, and they work mainly DUIs. And I think the other area, we used to have 2 background investigators. We currently have 1 background investigator in that particular area. So we're feeling the pinch in all areas. Also narcotics, we have 4. We did have 6.
Right. So thank you. I would just ask, especially if this comes to the full council, if we get the information you just shared, because I think it puts it into context as to what we had been versus what we are. And I know staffing studies are difficult for investigative units, but the actual work that these teams do, the very specialized work that they do, I think is important for us to recognize. And on that, when you talked about the staffing numbers, you know, my understanding of the obligated, unobligated time, it's 2 things. If you want to keep it half obligated and half unobligated, again, with the community policing philosophy, you can either add additional resources to keep that number 50-50 or stop responding to some calls for service. And I didn't see that as one of the opportunities that command staff potentially could say, well, we're going to stop going to these type of calls, which will reduce our calls for service by X percentage points, which will get us back to that number. Have you guys been having those discussions at all?
We have, and actually that's, you know, when you did ask for, you know, what kind of feedback do you want? I think the feedback, you know, I mentioned that, you know, we're looking for, you know, what are the priorities that, you know, the council has, and how that, you know, it comes down, and we set our priorities. So when we do that, we look at, you know, what calls do we not go to? And, you know, you know, you fight, you struggle with the desire to, you know, when somebody calls the police, they're calling for a reason, and you want to go. And that's the quality service, right, that we've seen in the past. And, you know, the reality is that we are very, very busy, you know, going to 140,000 calls for service a year. And so we are looking at how do we address that? And so cahoots is one of those things that we're looking at from a mental health standpoint. You know, we still go to calls for service regarding, you know, found property. You know, can we do something in a different way there? You know, how do we, you know, responding to traffic accidents? And again, traffic is one of the main issues in the city. But when we stop going to a traffic accident that's, you know, property damage, you know, you know, how do we manage the expectations of, to be honest, with council, and then also with the community on they're not getting an officer to come to this particular call. So, and then the other thing that we've had to deal with is, you know, we've had to limit our community engagement because of the calls for service that we go to. So I've been asked numerous times over the year, you know, can we go to a particular event? And my response is, we'd love to. It's going to depend on the capacity of our teams, because we can't take somebody off the street, or, you know, do we use discretionary overtime to put somebody out to an event for 3 hours, right? And so, trying to balance the being a good steward of our resources and, with the ongoing and increasing demands makes it very difficult. But we are looking at that. And again, some of the areas that we've said no to is there have been some events that we said we can't go. We're looking into the future on some of the other calls that we may not be going to.
Great, thank you. And I think that would be a helpful conversation, not just for council, but the entire community, based on some of the community conversations about reducing the level of funding. There are consequences for that. And I guess I'm just a proponent of let's be very deliberate and conscious that if we do this, this would be the potential consequences of that. And on that same line, you talked about civilian and lateral or entry level versus lateral officers coming in. Could you just very briefly just talk about the return on the investment about, okay, if we go the entry level route, that officer that we hire will not be the solo officer until X number. How long does that take versus a lateral, which I think, again, plays into the dollar investment. Which way do we want to focus on the retention and recruitment of new officers?
Can you help me out, Mayor, with the specific question on that?
So again, there's return on investment. I know a lateral officer typically will be operating as a solo officer in a certain amount of time versus an entry level. It would take them a longer period of time. I'm not sure. I want to make sure every member of this subcommittee and any listeners understand there is a difference, because you use that term entry level and laterals frequently, but there is a difference. And I would just like you to explain what those differences are. And I use the term return on investment, which is one way. Where are you going to put your recruitment strategies to get that solo officer to our community?
Yeah, we can definitely include that in a future presentation, but that is a balance that we try to do. And that's why we maintain the ongoing lateral or the experienced police officer recruitment throughout the year. So we can jump on, somebody who shows their interest rather than, waiting and doing the recruitment for a new trainee who has to go through the academy and then ends up being 2 years down the road who's helping us out. And so, I can come back with the actual from a financial standpoint, a budgetary, what that looks like. But the return on investment definitely with a lateral officer it's immediate. It's within probably a couple of months. Where we can get that person on the street to help facilitate or help reduce the impact of calls for service, whereas the other one is the trainee level is going to be 2 years down the road.
Great.
But we can come back with some numbers.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, we're now taking public comment on item 5.2, Santa Rosa Police Department staffing. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9. Madam Host, would you please facilitate public comment on item 5.2?
Of course. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. If you are participating in the meeting from the Spanish channel in Zoom, we have an interpreter on standby on the English channel to assist during your public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please be sure to pause throughout your comment to allow for interpretation. Those using interpreter support will be afforded additional time for your public comment as required by the Brown Act. For Spanish speakers, at the time you hear your name called, turn off the Spanish channel to make your public comment. This icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. Mayor, at this time, I'm seeing no hands raised. And, oh, one moment. Zomara, go ahead for interpretation. Sorry about that. Our first public comment will be from Colin Metcalf, followed by Lee. Colin, I have given you permission to unmute yourself. Can you see the timer on your screen?
Yeah, I can see the timer. Can you hear me?
Perfect, we can. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hi, my name is Colin Metcalf. I'm a lifetime resident of Santa Rosa and of Sonoma County in general. I just want to start by identifying one of Navarro's slides that I took issue with. I don't know if your interpretation of the word threats is threats to the police department as a whole or just threats to your staffing levels. I think listing public perception of policing as a threat is a very dangerous direction to be moving in. We've seen how you respond to the public perception of policing, the way Santa Rosa Police Department responded to protests over the course of the summer, shooting people in the face with rubber bullets and tear gas canisters and rounding people up and chasing them down in the streets like they're animals. Yeah, it definitely seems like you think that the public perception of policing is a threat. So I think you need to change your framing around that. Gratified to hear that you're having issues with staffing. I would love to see your staffing drop to zero. I think there's a lot of situations that the police respond to that they're not equipped for, that we should be replacing with other services instead. I was really gratified to hear earlier this year that Santa Rosa is moving towards more of like a cahoots type model to respond to homelessness and mental health issues. That'll be great to hear about on the next item as well. To the individual who dropped out of the police academy, congrats, you made the right choice. I think a lot of this is, there's a serious issue with this, and I understand that you're viewing this as serious losses to your department, and I get that, you know. I'm sure it's scary to be the commander of a department where you're losing individuals, where you feel like you have this public safety mandate, but we're in the middle of a significant change in the way the public wants to see public safety enacted, and I think maybe you could reframe your thinking towards a more cooperative approach rather than seeing this potential significant change in society as a threat to your job and your department. You could see instead just the way society is changing and work along with it instead of fighting it. Thanks.
The next public comment will be from Lee, followed by Michael. Lee, I have given you permission to unmute yourself. Can you confirm you see the timer on your screen?
I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hi, I just, I want to, gosh, I'm not sure where to start. I'm going to start by saying, I think the public, I think in the last, several months, the public has had an opportunity to have law enforcement truly revealed in a way that it hasn't been in the past to many people. And so we've seen a change in the entire culture of, instead of tolerating the inconsistencies that law enforcement that we've now seen, and the danger that so many people have to encounter all the time. And we've seen cities and counties all over the country demanding defunding so that people who are better equipped and better trained and better educated can be first responders. I'm thrilled that you're looking at the cahoots possibility. That's very hopeful. I'm hopeful that it is hard to recruit, because what that means is it's possibly changing, and we have the opportunity to actually educate those who do stay in law enforcement to have better education, bigger education, and education that would include understanding de-escalation. We need to be very careful about having the very people that many people in the community fear for real reasons be the people who are also doing trainings, doing recruitment. It's very upsetting. It's upsetting to see that our city is still talking is still kind of holding on to this when it was pretty much a mandate from the community in this last election, what most people really want. It has been an overwhelming opportunity to watch and listen as hundreds of people in our community have called in and said, this is not okay with us anymore. It is not okay to move officers who have committed violent acts on people from one place to another. It is not okay. It is not okay to have uneducated people responding to calls for people with mental illnesses, for homelessness. It's very dangerous. And I hope that we move the funds into the community and out of law enforcement for the safety of everyone. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Our next public comment will be from Michael. Michael, I have enabled your speaking permissions. Can you please confirm you see the timer on your screen?
I do.
Perfect. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hey, this is Michael Tatone. I want to echo what the last two speakers said. I feel that public perception, it's not that I feel this, I know it to be true, and I know that you know it to be true too. Public perception of police is not the problem. The problem, it's an effect of the problem. The problem is the things that police have been doing that have been giving themselves a bad reputation. The public is just responding to those things. And so what needs to happen in order to address that is some actual reckoning with the practices, the incidents that have caused there to be distrust in the community. Not superficial programs which are designed to make the police look like they're part of the community. Thinking of the ethnic studies facilitated by police program. I feel like these are ways of trying to make the police look like they're good when it's not an attempt to address the things that people are actually having issues with. The treatment of the homeless, the treatment of protesters, police brutality. These are the real issues. And it's not just the police too, the way that the city handles the homeless is actually part of the problem too. So they bear a big part of that responsibility. And the community does too. But the police specifically need to address those problems. It's not activists' fault for creating a bad reputation for the police. They're really just responding to what's going on. And I think it's really important to start doing that in order to actually start building trust in the community, is to take those problems seriously and not treat them as if they're just this thing out there that is happening to police. So I'll yield the rest of my time.
Our next public comment will be from Daniela Delario. Daniela, I have given you permission. I have enabled your speaking permission. Can you please confirm if you can see the timer on your screen?
I do.
Perfect. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Daniela. I am a local Spanish teacher. I've been in Sonoma County for 30 or so years on and off. And I just wanted to say thank you for this meeting. And I wanted to echo what some of the other callers have said as well, specifically about the societal change that we're really seeing and that so many people in our community are calling for. We really do want to see the city of Santa Rosa and really all of Sonoma County start to invest more in community, investing in teachers, social services, services for the houseless in our community, affordable housing. These are all things that most people, I don't think anyone would really argue that is what makes a community more healthy, and that's what will help create positive changes here. If we can have less police, I think that's a really good thing, to invest in cahoots and other programs like that. So we have first responders who are trained in de-escalation techniques, not just as, a weekend training or maybe a week or so, that a training that like police could go and do to say that they completed a de-escalation training, but people, social workers, crisis workers who really that's their job, that's their specialty. They have years of this training so that they can be the first responders when they're better equipped to handle situations such as homelessness, and mental health crisis, domestic violence, all these different situations that studies have shown that social workers and trained crisis workers are actually better at handling than sending, police with guns and who the way they look is actually intimidating to people who are having a mental health crisis or other crisis. So I'm really thrilled to hear that we are hopefully going to be doing a program such as Cahoots, because I think it will help our community. And just again, I want to say investing in our community, investing in teachers who, I heard talk about competitive salaries for police. Teachers don't make enough money to live in Sonoma County, and we're really we're trying to create more opportunities for the youth of our county. So really investing in teachers, social workers, affordable housing, I think that's going to create a more successful and healthy community here in Sonoma County. So again, thank you so much. I yield the rest of my time.
Mayor, at this time, I see no further hands raised, and we received no voicemail or email public comment.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll bring it back to the subcommittee. Any final comments? I'll start with you, Mr. Sawyer.
No final comments, just my appreciation for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Fleming, any comments or additional questions?
Yeah, thank you. I did have one piece of feedback. You did ask Chief about, any areas of special concern, and one of your staffing data points that I did find concerning was around particularly the reduction in domestic violence, sexual assault staff assigned to that special assignment. And so I was just curious to know if that had impacted our ability to be responsive to people going through those difficult situations.
So again, the domestic violence sexual assault team is a priority because of the high number of calls that we get. They get the most call outs in relation to any of our other special assignments. We have a detective who is on call every week, so we do respond when needed. The initial response to a domestic violence or sexual assault call is always going to be patrol, and they're going to be the first ones. And then our DVSA detective will be called out. So we do have a mechanism to address all of those. Again, we have been intentional in keeping those as staffed as possible. The one area, again, so we can respond to domestic violence, sexual assault investigations. The one thing it does impact us is we in the past have done, operations on child exploitation operations to try to find offenders, and those have been reduced based on the number of staff that we have.
Okay, well, that's certainly troubling to hear. The other question I had was since the legalization of cannabis a couple of years ago, and coupled with the increase in fentanyl, sort of two very different types of narcotic situations, but has that changed the net need in your department for responders to those types of calls?
So our we don't deal with really with investigating marijuana calls, but we do have. So we don't proactively seek out marijuana investigations. But we do have calls that come in regarding home invasions, you know, when people are doing their own grows, that sort of thing, and they're getting stolen or ripped, or they're being robbed by criminals. We've had some burglaries at some of the dispensaries. But outside of that, the biggest issue that we have are opioids, and fentanyl is the biggest concern. And so the biggest thing that we've done is pivot on how we address some of these things. So we're pretty much entirely, our narcotics team is entirely addressing the opioid fentanyl issue right now, and it's very, very busy for them. So the amount of calls and the amount of investigations, the only thing that has, you know, we reduce the number of cases that are assigned because we have less people, but we still get a lot of complaints and a lot of crime around those. And so that's the biggest, I think that's the biggest area that we've got. We're not really dealing with the legalization of marijuana. We're dealing with some of the effects of people who aren't permitted and are dealing with those on the backside. And so dealing with those home invasions, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful information. That's all from me.
All right, and I want to thank you, Chief, for the presentation. And I would just ask that you please keep this in front of the City Council, because as we evolve here, these are going to be challenging times. And the more information that you presented today, I think is good for all of us. So with that, we need to take another break, and we will reconvene at 12 o'clock noon. Reconvene at 12 noon. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, are we ready to roll?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, could we'll then reconvene the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Sawyer?
Councilmember Sawyer?
Vice Mayor Fleming?
Here.
Mayor Schwedhelm?
Here.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Here.
All members are on record.
Do we need any other adjustments for the interpreter, or are we ready to move forward?
Yes, I have assigned interpreter Charles to the Spanish channel. Charles, if you wouldn't mind turning on your video and just giving me a visual thumbs up, please. Perfect, thank you. We are set, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And just for everyone's understanding, we do have a hard stop at 12:30. We will lose our quorum at 12:30. So just be conscious of our timeframes. So with that, I will now call item 5.3. Police Captain John Cregan, you'll be doing this presentation, is my understanding?
Yes.
Thank you, please proceed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Cregan, and I serve as a captain with the Santa Rosa Police Department. I'm going to give you a brief update today on our ongoing efforts to reform the Santa Rosa Police Department's mental health response model. This is truly a transformational moment for our police department and our community as a whole. Our priority for the police department as we develop this program is strong collaboration with our community members and city leaders on this critical topic. We want to ensure that we're meeting the expectations of our community as we work to develop a better service model for responding to those experiencing a mental health crisis, as well as vulnerable members of our community who are experiencing homelessness. I've already given a comprehensive update in the past to the Public Safety Subcommittee on the CAHOOTS model, but today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of our goals going forward and the timelines for this important project. So if you look here on the slide, one of the biggest things we've done since we last spoke with the council on this topic is that we've been on ongoing negotiations and talks with the Whitebird Clinic. And the Whitebird Clinic is the local nonprofit in Eugene, Oregon, who runs the group called CAHOOTS, which manages the mental health response there for Eugene and Springfield. So we're near the completion of this signed agreement with the Whitebird Clinic to be able to be a consultant to the Santa Rosa Police Department and the city of Santa Rosa as we help to develop our own program model off of CAHOOTS right here in Sonoma County. So some of the goals that we have going forward and our anticipated timeline is we're going to be having a series of meetings not only with the Whitebird Clinic consultants, but our other city leaders, and that's going to include representatives from Housing and Community Services, also some of our local nonprofits that we're already engaged in on these efforts, including Catholic Charities, Buckaloo programs, Social Advocates for Youth. We'll be working closely with the Santa Rosa Violence Prevention Partnership, as they're one of the greatest collaborative groups of local nonprofits, and going to be able to present to them on some of our efforts and also to see what assistance we can get from many of the local nonprofits that are represented in that group, as well as many other key stakeholders. We're also, one important thing is that we're going to be facilitating some community stakeholder groups and be able to, and during the time of COVID, we're going to have to do that via Zoom, but we're going to be facilitating that to be able to hear more from our community about what do they want to see in this important topic and have our community be a part of the implementation of this program with us. In the meantime, as we're waiting to facilitate these city and community meetings, we're going to be continuing our efforts to create the program that's going to be right for our community right here in Santa Rosa. And the CAHOOTS program has actually been tremendously successful, but they've had 31 years to evolve that program and to make it what it is today. So we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. Our hope is to be able to take a lot of the strengths of what they're doing there in Eugene and be able to implement that without our program. Part of our agreement with the Whitebird Clinic will be getting their job descriptions and their training models for their staff, and then we're going to be incorporating that. Another big thing, though, that's going to be different for us is identifying the equipment needs, but also the costs and the funding sources for our program right here in Santa Rosa. So that's going to be a citywide project as we examine that and determine what it's going to cost to be able to get a program as successful as the COOS program running right here in Sonoma County. The next big item that's going to be going out is we're just starting the process of developing our RFP, our request for proposals. And this will be a formal proposal agreement that goes out citywide and for local nonprofits and other interested groups to be able to submit proposals that will come before the city as we try to select the nonprofit that has the capacity and the ability to get this program off and running. So our timeline for that is to have this draft of what our program is going to look like and this formal request for proposals going out for local nonprofits by February of 2021. So that's a robust amount of work that needs to be done, and a lot of city time effort has been going into this over the last couple months. But we're hoping by February to see this RFP go out and then to be able to start identifying our nonprofit who's going to run this program and get the formations of this program by the end of July of 2021. And we're understanding that it took Eugene 31 years. So it's going to take some time for us to identify the capacity to have 24/7, 7-day-a-week coverage. And that's our goal, to be able to have that and have this new model of responding to mental health crisis, helping us with our the homeless issues in our community. And we're just excited here at the police department for the possibilities it's going to have, not only for the police department, but our community as a whole. And that's the information just kind of for our quick update today on where we're at.
Great, thank you, Captain Cregan. Bring it back to the subcommittee. Mr. Sawyer, do you have any questions on the presentation?
No questions.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor Fleming, any questions from your perspective?
None, thank you.
Yeah, I don't either. I do appreciate, Captain, the information that you provided and keeping us appraised of the progress here. So we're now taking public comment on item 5.3, the police department timeline for response to mental illness, homelessness. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9. Madam Host, would you please facilitate public comment on item 5.3?
Of course. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. If you are participating in the meeting from the Spanish channel in Zoom, we have an interpreter on standby on the English channel to assist during your public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please be sure to pause throughout your comment to allow for interpretation. Those using interpreter support will be afforded additional time for your public comment as required by the Brown Act. For Spanish speakers, at the time you hear your name called, turn off the Spanish channel to make your public comment. This icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. Our first public comment will be from Lee, followed by Bailey. Lee, I have enabled your speaking permissions. Can you confirm you see the timer on your screen?
I do, thank you.
Perfect. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hi, my name is Lee, and I'm a community member in Santa Rosa. I'm also disabled and from mental health issues. I'm also privileged, and I am a member of a community of people who intersect at mental illness, but I see people who are like me who suffer so much more because the response that the people that they deal with at the first responders when they're in crisis are not trained. They don't have the education. They do not have PhDs. They do not have 4 years of psych. They do not have the education to de-escalate. They can't distinguish between somebody who is autistic and having a meltdown and between somebody who is on drugs. It is all over the country. We have a an autistic Black youth that has been pardoned but is still in jail because law enforcement cannot understand the difference. We saw Elijah McClain get murdered by police because he was having a reaction that they thought was drugs and was absolutely mental health. If you need 30 years to figure this out, then you need to stop and absolutely hire people who already know right now, who don't need 20, 30 years, who have the education. This is a crisis. When we see online houseless communities become dismantled and people who have privilege and have had hours and hours of mental health help, and we see people who are our people getting treated by people who have no education, it is absolutely terrifying. It is not okay. And this is a very personal issue for me, as you can hear. And I want you to recognize that when all of these people called in, hundreds of people in the last 6 months calling in, people were calling in to defund because of things like this, because people are getting murdered, and because the mental health of a police officer they can't handle their response. And we've seen it countless times. They don't know how to handle their response because they do not have education. They do not have hours and hours and hours of de-escalating their own hearts and minds. That's the training we need. That's why we fund the community. We fund public mental health communities so that people can de-escalate themselves or each other. But this is not working, and it's dangerous for everyone. I yield my time.
Our next public comment will be from Bailey. Bailey, I have enabled your speaking permissions. If you could please unmute your microphone.
Yes, hello.
Hi, can you confirm you see the timer on your screen?
Yes, I can see the timer.
Perfect. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Bailey, longtime Sonoma County resident, and I just want to say that yes, I think it is great that you are wanting to implement somewhat of a cahoots model. Do I think that it's too late? Yes. There's been mental health crisis and untrained people, especially law enforcement, trying to deal with these crises, and they always end up in not. It just isn't done right. People aren't trained. Like Lee said before, I want to echo what she has said. There's definitely people that are way more well-trained for these types of instances. A little bit of my personal experience, me being schizophrenic, in the past when I've had pretty big psychoses and breaks, the police aren't the first people that I'm going to call. I don't want to call them at all, really, because they're not trained to take care of people like me. And I want to say that you definitely need to get people in there that are well trained for these types of instances. And if you are looking for the budget and where to get it, there's definitely a few inflated budgets in this county, the police department being one of them, and I think you should take money from that. Yeah, so I yield my time. Thank you.
Our next public comment will be from Daniela. Daniela, I have enabled your speaking permissions. Can you confirm you see the timer on your screen?
I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Hi, I'm Daniela. Hello again. And again, thank you so much for that presentation and for this meeting. I first just want to express compassion for the last two callers that called in. It's really heartbreaking to hear what people are struggling with. And as we all know, mental health issues have only gotten worse and gotten more intense during this pandemic. So I just want to first express compassion for those two callers and just for our whole community that is
likely experiencing more mental health issues. I also want to express gratitude that we are bringing a CAHOOTS model to Santa Rosa and to Sonoma County. I think it is long overdue. And I understand the Whitebird Clinic has had much more experience. They have had 31 years to develop this program into what it is today. And I'm hoping it's not going to take us that long since they've done so much work. I'm hoping that we can make big strides and really see results from the work that we do. Because I do think it's logical, it's the right thing to do to have first responders who have, not just a weekend training, not just 1 week a year or every couple of years, but have years of de-escalating training and trauma-informed care, that's their expertise, and that they're experts in that, and they can really respond in a way that is not going to provoke fear to people who are having mental health crisis situations. They can respond in a way that is compassionate and is informed, in a way that police just really can't. So I am thrilled that we're doing this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what actually gets done. We're taking the first steps, and that's great, but I'm hoping to see results soon and not, 10 or 15 years down the line, because it is overdue. And yeah, that's it. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you so much.
That is the last of our live public comment. We do have some voicemail public comment, which I will play now. One moment, please. I need to adjust the settings. One moment. Thank you for your patience. We are having technical difficulties playing the voicemail public comment at this time. We also received no email public comment for this item.
Okay, absent that, Mr. Sawyer or Vice Mayor Fleming, any additional comments for Captain Cregan?
No, well, just one comment. I'm glad to see that we are moving forward as rapidly as possible. I know that it's going to be great for our public safety part of our organization and also the community. So as soon as we can get up and running, the better off everyone will be. And I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Great.
And for myself, same as Councilmember Sawyer, I'm looking forward to this program getting rolled out as soon as possible.
Great. I echo the sentiments, my fellow subcommittee members. Thank you, Mr. Cregan. All right, item 5.4, Chief Navarro. And Chief Navarro, you've got about 10 minutes before we're gonna lose our quorum.
Thank you. I'll be very, very brief. So we wanted to come before you with some information. In December, we were originally going to bring the after action report to you. However, the consultants, Hillard Hines, LLC, their appointment with us was happened to be the week of the glass fire. So there's been some delay because they were unable to meet with key staff and review necessary information. And there was delay there, and we will not be able to get that information to you, to this body by December. We expect the after action report to be ready in January. And just as a reminder, the after action report goes over a general operation and response of the entire incident throughout the week. Does not go into specific use of force incidents. After speaking with, getting an update from the city attorney's office, it's my understanding that the investigation that relates to the use of force should be available in or around February. And so we want to let you know what the delay was for the after action report. And I think we're looking for guidance on timelines regarding when this after action report should come. And I believe the city attorney may have more information on the other report and other guidelines. That's all I have.
Yes, thank you, Chief Navarro. And I will, as he described the after action report, this relates to the protests back in last May and June. We do expect that will be finalized probably sometime in December or early January. And it is, as the chief described, an overview of the city's response to those protests. At the same time, we have also focused in on the use of force, incidences of use of force, and that is on a separate track. We have engaged an independent consultant to review all of the incidents of use of force during the protests. And that consulting contract is being run through our office. They are working with the department in the investigation and interviewing of staff and other stakeholders. And we'll be, we'll be focusing, as I said, on all of the incidences of use of force that occurred, but they'll be particularly focusing on the 4 incidences of use of projectiles that resulted in injuries. And also we'll be looking at the use of tear gas during the protests. We do intend that when we bring that study forward, we will also be bringing to the council the report that was issued last summer by the Sonoma County Human Rights Commission, because it also focuses on those, not on the general picture, but it focuses on those specific incidences of use of force. We do feel that bringing all of that together will give you a more complete picture all at once. So it would be the after action report, the audit of the use of force audit, and the Human Rights Commission report. But that would likely cause a delay. As the chief mentioned, we're anticipating that the use of force audit will be completed sometime in February, but we do not yet have a date certain. So probably would be looking at bringing that sometime in February or maybe early March. So it is an option and we're looking for guidance from the subcommittee as to whether you want to move forward with the after action report, probably sometime in January, and then wait and bring the audit and the Human Rights Commission report subsequently, or whether you want to wait and bring them all together. That's one piece of the question. The other piece would be Would it be your preference to have these reports come to your subcommittee first before it goes to the full council, or do you prefer it simply to go directly to the full council? And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Given we have approximately 5 minutes left, I'll start out with some comments and then we'll get as much public comment on this item as possible. So for me, the feedback would be, I think it should be all together, both reports, because I think one in and of itself will not have the information that the other one provides. And I know, I've committed to, we want to have this public conversation when we have all the information available. And since I think eventually it's coming to the whole council, have the two reports together and let's just bring it to the entire council at the same time, whenever those reports are complete. Mr. Sawyer, your thoughts?
I agree with you, Mayor. For continuity, I would like them both to come at the same time, and I think there's no reason to preview it with. I don't believe there's a reason to preview it with the subcommittee. I think it could come to the full council, and so we would all be hearing it at the same time.
Okay, Vice Mayor Fleming, your thoughts?
Agreed.
Okay, we're now taking public comment on item 5.4. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9. Madam Host, would you facilitate public comment on 5.4?
Of course. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. If you are participating in the meeting from the Spanish channel in Zoom, we have an interpreter on standby on the English channel to assist during your public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please be sure to pause throughout your comment to allow for interpretation. Those using interpreter support will be afforded additional time for your public comment as required by the Brown Act. For Spanish speakers, at the time you hear your name called, turn off the Spanish channel to make your public comment. This icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. Our first public comment. Oh, Mayor, I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that brief presentation. Vice Mayor or Councilmember Sawyer, is there any other information you wanted to provide on this item?
No, thank you, Mayor. Good job.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chief and City Attorney Gallagher. Could we go back? Were we able to work out the public comment on our last item? We had 3 recorded messages on item 5.3. Did we work that technical difficulties yet out?
Yes, we did. One moment.
Hi there, my name is Catherine, and first and foremost, I just wanted to thank the board and whoever has been working on implementing more mental health and homelessness solutions. I know that a primary concern for many people is the fact that we are approaching winter, about to get really, really cold. There's going to be heavy rains and dropping temperatures. So I think that we should not do any sweeps, homeless sweeps. I think that this is a very vulnerable time, not to mention that it's going to be the holidays, a tough time for people emotionally in general, that we need to take some serious steps to help that population. So I know a lot of people are going to be calling about this because this is something we're all very concerned about. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I am calling about item 5.3. I am in huge support of the City of Santa Rosa doing whatever it takes to address the crises of mental health and homelessness. But for the time being, it seems imperative to completely cease homeless encampment sweeps and evictions because we're doing this on the regular. We have people in Santa Rosa who go and try to help the homeless folks when this happens. And it's just heartbreaking to see them trying to put down roots and stay safe, and to have them just be forcibly removed as though they were not human beings. Santa Rosa, you need to be more compassionate than this. Please, we have so many homeless people in our community, and we must treat them better than this. We have freezing cold temperature. It was already, it's mid-November, and we've had freezing temperatures at night already. And what are we doing about that? What are we doing to help these people who are our community? Homeless folks are our community. They're not just beings, things on the side of the road. There are people, and we have to take care of them. The expectation that people are going to start from scratch every couple of months after they've been kicked out over and over again, that is insane and ridiculous. And we have to start helping our marginalized communities. Otherwise, we are not a good nor a strong city. Our very own public health officer, Sundari Mays, as well as the CDC, have told us not to do these sweeps since May of this year. How are we going to progress as any sort of compassionate and functional city if we're doing this against the orders of the CDC? And we all know what happens when we ignore the CDC, because we are in the middle of month 7 of shelter in place and quarantine and lockdowns, and it sucks. Also, fuck the police. Thank you.
Mayor, due to time, would you like me to play the last voicemail public comment?
I still see Mr. Sawyer there. We still have a quorum. If Mr.
Okay,
Sawyer,
I'll go.
for one more.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Belle Alvarez, and I'm commenting on item number 5.3. I just wanted to call in and say that I think it's fantastic that people are trying to help out the homeless community right now, especially as we are in the middle of rain and the temperatures are starting to drop. But I definitely just wanted to say that I think that we should be stopping all sweeping of encampments. Moving people from place to place literally does nothing for them, and it uproots them. When people are just camping out on unused property, what else is the property being used for, really? What is the harm in just letting people stay so that they can gather the supplies that they need to be able to stay warm and stay alive in the winter? So, thanks.
And that concludes our voicemail public comment.
Great. Thank you. Having no further items on the agenda to discuss, we will adjourn this November 23rd meeting. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer, for hanging with us. I know it's interrupting your next meeting, but meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.